Timeless Assassin. By author Raj_Shah_7152. Chapter 376-400. Basement Level 5, Post-Inspection Chamber, seconds later. Leo stepped through the sliding door of the inspection chamber, now wearing the semi-transparent cotton gown that clung uncomfortably to his skin, as the cold air of the next room prickled across his chest and thighs. The two violet-marked operatives followed close behind, their steps silent as ever, as they ushered him forward into a narrow sterile passage that curved slightly to the left. At the end of this corridor was a steel-lined alcove housing a single metal stool, atop which rested a sealed crystal vial filled with an iridescent green liquid that shimmered faintly under the dim overhead lights. "Drink it," one of the operatives instructed, his tone clipped but not unkind. Leo stepped forward, lifted the vial, uncorked it, and without ceremony, tipped it into his mouth. The taste was foul, thick, acrid, and vaguely metallic, like rotting copper mixed with seaweed, as within seconds of swallowing, his body reacted violently. His stomach lurched as bile surged up his throat, and he staggered to his knees beside the metal stool just in time to vomit onto the grated floor. Herc! The first heave brought out a stream of clear liquid, followed by a second that dragged up thicker globs of translucent stomach acid, all of which hissed faintly as they hit the enchanted drain before slipping in glob after glob. Herc! A third heave yielded nothing but a sharp pain in his ribs, as Leo coughed hoarsely and wiped his lips with the back of his wrist, his body trembling from the convulsion. Yet when it passed, he stood back up, breathing heavily but steadier, his face pale but his eyes sharp. "Oh, thank the Lord I did not go with the vomit plan, or I would have been exposed right here," he thought, feeling oddly satisfied by his decision to swallow the keychain 12 hours prior, as his backup plan, as undignified as it had been, had succeeded. The two operatives observed his vomit closely, but once they found nothing of note, they glanced at each other, before motioning him forward once more. They passed through a final security archway, its curved rune-etched frame pulsing a soft white as it scanned Leo's body one last time. When no alarm sounded, the final door unveiled itself, splitting down the middle with an airy hiss. Beyond which lay the true passageway to the vault. Step, step. Walking down the narrow 100 feet corridor leading towards the vault door, Leo felt an odd pressure pressing down on him. This passageway had no guards, however, it felt like it had a decoy wall. As he felt a constant uneasiness that something lethal would spring out of the wall, the moment someone who wasn't supposed to be here tried to be here. However, it was an instinct he was never able to verify, for very soon, he reached the vault door. The vault door was massive at about 40 feet tall and 25 feet wide, and seemed to be made from a metal that Leo did not quite understand. Its surface glowed faintly with golden sigils that constantly rearranged themselves like living scripture. Its perimeter bore no keyhole, no panel, no code to open the vault, and only had a smooth metallic ring and 3 thin indentations that seemed to serve no obvious mechanical purpose at first glance. "Wait," one of the operatives said, as he pulled out the same blade-like token he had used earlier, though this time, he unsheathed a second one from his companion and slotted both simultaneously into the indentations flanking the main seal. A soft click echoed. Then the two of them pressed their palms onto a glyph panel that shimmered into view above the vault's surface. A low mechanical groan echoed through the walls, followed by a deeper, more primal sound, a guttural asterisk hiss, as the pressure within the chamber shifted, sucking the air slightly inward before stabilizing. The vault had depressurized, and its end suddenly popped out of the surrounding wall, as it automatically opened to about 15 degrees, just wide enough for a man to enter. Once the vault opened, the two guards immediately stepped back in unison and turned their backs to the vault door, as they did not dare even peek at what was inside. "You have 30 minutes to make a choice once you're inside," said the one to his left. "The air within will only last for 30 minutes, said the one to his right. "After that, this gate will seal shut," the left continued. "And you will be trapped inside with no way to breathe, no way to escape, and no one to save you," finished the right. "So make your decision within the time limit, and return before your breath runs out," the left concluded while still facing away. Leo gave a short nod. "I understand," he said, his voice level. Then, without hesitation, he stepped through the opening gate, crossing the threshold into the vault. The air inside was cool, impossibly still, and smelled faintly of copper and ancient parchment. Thud! The vault door slid shut behind him with an almost tender finality, and a glowing green panel with the word, "Open," appeared on the back end of the door, as a countdown for 30 minutes began. Leo assumed that tapping that, "Open," sign would allow him to exit, as he clapped his hands and thanked the gods for having this place to himself, as at least, he had no physical guard present to keep watch over him. "No observers, if there are no cameras either, I will be Gucci to carry on with the heist plan," he noted instantly, scanning the interior of the vault as his gaze swept across the floor, walls, and ceiling. The space was vast, far more expansive than he had expected, like a hollowed-out dome carved into the underbelly of the earth itself. Tall shelves lined the outer edges, stacked high with relics, weapons, and metallic ingots sealed behind reinforced mana glass. Rows of illuminated pedestals filled the center of the room, each bearing a different artifact, suspended in gentle stasis fields. Scrolls that glowed with runic chains. Swords that shimmered with folded elemental layers. Jewels that pulsed like sleeping hearts. It was, without a doubt, the greatest display of magical abundance he had ever laid eyes upon. And yet, Leo ignored all of it. Because his eyes were not here to admire. His hands were not here to take. His mission was not to claim a prize but to complete the heist setup he was here for, so he squinted and stepped forward cautiously as he scanned the walls for anything unusual such as cameras, floating mana eyes or sound detection runes, but no matter how deeply he peered, the room gave nothing away. There seemed to be no mana artifacts embedded into the walls, no whisper of surveillance, no trace of a presence that could betray his next move. But just to double-check, he used absolute vision to perform a deep scan as well, and while the mana artifacts in the room glowed with insane mana energy, the actual walls came back as nothing but reinforced metal walls, with no hidden devices in them. It was as if the black serpents, in their arrogance, that no one could ever make it this far, did not bother to include that security feature. And so, Leo exhaled slowly, rolled his shoulders, and got to work, for the timer on the wall was already down to 28:20. Basement level 5, inside the vault, timer, 28:19. Got to start working. Step 1, retrieve the damn keychain, Leo muttered to himself, as his face flustered red just at the thought of what he was supposed to do next. He glanced around again, eyes narrowing, as he once again made sure that there were no recording devices watching him. As although he had already confirmed that he was in the clear with absolute vision, the idea of doing the deed openly still made his skin crawl. I know no one's watching. But still this. He couldn't bring himself to do it in plain sight. This had always been the worst part of the plan for him, as he had secretly hoped that there would be a guard keeping watch so that he never had to complete this part. However, fate seemed to have other plans. It seemed like today, fate itself wanted him to perform the humiliating act of pulling a swallowed object out from the one place that no self-respecting person ever wanted to reach into. And to top it all off, he had to do it alone, in a room filled with priceless artifacts and reinforced mana glass pedestals, that were each worth at least a few 100 million MP. I'll die from embarrassment if Chaosbringer or anyone from the Uprising ever finds out that the mighty boss once took a dump in a treasure vault, he thought grimly, as just the thought made him shiver involuntarily. I know I probably don't need to, but it's still probably best to go ahead with the contingency I planned, for the sake of my own self-respect. Leo thought, as he dashed towards the nearest object, while simultaneously using Mirror World as he summoned a perfect clone that instantly mimicked his posture and expression. Then in that same split second, he activated Vanish, shrouding his real body in invisibility as he crouched low, and went the other way from where the clone was heading, hiding himself behind one of the artifact pedestals, as he squatted in dumping position. On one hand, the clone took over, walking with a natural gait, hands behind its back, as it inspected the stasis fields and the magical items on display with calm interest. And on the other, the real Leo pulled his robe aside, crouched lower, and braced himself mentally. All right, let's just do this. Easy, quick, clean. He pressed both hands against the cold metal floor, took a deep breath, and began to apply pressure, slow, deliberate, and increasingly awkward. His jaw clenched. His legs trembled slightly, while the gown clung unhelpfully to his thighs. God, this is the most humiliating thing I've ever done, he thought, as seconds passed, but nothing happened. He pushed again. Still nothing. And then, plop, a soft metallic sound hit the ground beside him, and Leo almost sighed in relief before he even looked down. There it was. The small, black keychain, covered in a thin layer of mucus, but thankfully, only mucus. Praise be to the gods of digestion, he thought, as he picked it up with 2 fingers, carefully avoiding direct contact, and immediately activated Dark Flame to burn and cleanse the object. Whoosh! He was careful to not damage it, only activating the flame for a split second before stopping, as he ensured that the enchantment on the small keychain remained intact. Yep, never doing this again, Leo concluded, as he did not even feel proud of what he achieved, as he instead preferred to scrub this memory out of his mind forever. Then, without wasting another second, he straightened his spine, took another deep breath, and began scanning the vault for the best place to set up a dimensional portal, as after looking around, he saw a few empty object pedestals in a corner, which were probably capable of suspending an object in upright stasis, but were currently out of commission because they had no treasure to hold. That seems perfect, he concluded, as disguising the frame like a treasure felt like the best course of action to take. 27 minutes left, he noticed on the clock, as he hurriedly made his way towards one of the empty pedestals, and began activating the keychain in his hand, so that he could pull out the mana frame from inside it, as instructed by Master Argo. Meanwhile, back at the upper levels of the guild headquarters, Antonio leaned back into his leather chair with his legs propped lazily over the polished long desk, as in one hand he held a half-filled porcelain cup, and in another, a small gold-framed artifact, which looked like a mirror no wider than a palm, but with glowing runes etched along its sides. The glass shimmered faintly with green and gold as it pulsed in sync with his mana, showing a perfect bird's-eye view of the vault chamber below. He swirled the tea in his cup, watching Leo's movements with mild interest. He's scanning the ceiling first thing, is he? Antonio mused aloud, as his fingers tapped the rim of the cup twice. Can't say I'm surprised. Assassins love to map the kill zone first. He gave a low chuckle and sipped from the cup, his eyes never leaving the reflection. Looking for a camera. It was never in the walls, kid, he whispered, amused. The mirror in his hand was a semi-divine artifact that could show him the bird's-eye view of any place he had personally visited in the past 6 months, regardless of how far away it was. And since Antonio had been to the vault in the past 6 months, he could see every action Leo performed in there clear as day. He watched as Leo, after searching the space for cameras, burst into a blur of motion, rushing towards the leftmost artifact in the room, as he paused only when he reached it, before beginning to lean over it, as he read the description plate attached below. On one hand, it looked fine, nothing too suspicious, but on another, something about his sudden motion felt off. For the briefest moment before he began to run, barely a split second, his form seemed to flicker unnaturally, like a ripple of water beneath moonlight. To Antonio's trained transcendent eyes, it looked like a split. But with the mirror in his hand showing only 120 frames per second, he couldn't be sure of what he saw, like he would have, if he were watching this unfold live before his actual eyes. The hell? Antonio's smile faded slightly as he leaned in, narrowed his eyes, and tapped the side of the mirror twice. The feed remained perfectly stable. No glitches. No more random splitting. And yet, what he had just seen was unmistakable. Am I being too paranoid? He muttered, his voice lower now, eyes sharp. Or did the kid just try something funny? He sat still for a long moment, weighing the variables in his head. Then he sighed and stood up slowly, placing the mirror gently back into its velvet-lined case. Better to be safe than sorry, he said, walking around his desk as his longcoat brushed the sides of his boots. The elevator ride to reach the vault would take a long time, because first, he had to go down to the lobby, then a switch to elevator 3, and from there, a full descent to basement level 5 took a minimum of 12 minutes to complete, meaning Leo could very well be out of the vault by the time he reached, but Antonio decided to go anyways. As the guild's vice guildmaster, he had to confirm that everything was okay with his own eyes, for if Leo was really trying something funny, then he had to be punished before he succeeded in harming the institution. Basement level 5, inside the vault, timer, 27:03. Leo crouched beside the empty pedestal, the cold mana glass humming faintly beneath his palm as he took one final deep breath and clasped the black keychain tighter in his hand. I hope activating you doesn't suck me dry, Leo hoped, as he pushed mana into the keychain slowly at first, then faster, until the orb began to tremble against his skin, vibrating like a trapped hummingbird caught between glass and thunder. *ZH. Crack. The sphere let out a sharp pulse of energy and imploded inward, collapsing into itself like a dying star, before stabilizing into a tiny, swirling vortex the size of a clenched fist, as it took its final form as a short-life dimensional portal that pulsated faintly with violet and black colors. That's my window, Leo thought, as he did not hesitate even slightly once the portal formed. He thrust his right hand straight into the swirling hole, reaching beyond its warped space, as a strange gel-like sensation covered the part of his skin that was pushing through the portal. It felt ticklish and unfamiliar, but he ignored how it felt, and focused on reaching the other side instead, as his fingertips soon grazed the edge of metal. Thank God, it seems like I have indeed drawn the other end of the portal correctly, Leo thought in relief, as he clenched the edge of the metal frame and yanked on it as hard as he could. Whoosh! The frame slid through the portal like a sword through silk, its larger body compressing unnaturally to pass through the tiny hole, as it came out the other side and refound its original shape. Tied to it was a power core attached by a strong wire, and thankfully, Leo had pulled on it with enough momentum to also pull the power core alongside the frame, as both objects shot out in a single motion, just before the portal shrunk to a pinpoint and vanished. There was no residue left behind, no trace that the portal was ever there, as Leo was only left with the frame, the power core and the attaching wire in his hands. All good so far, Leo assessed, as he quickly bent over and activated the stasis mechanism of the pedestal just in front of him, as the dull pedestal glowed with a faint white light, and the anti-gravity rune on its surface activated. With both hands, Leo raised the frame and gently placed it inside the field, as once within the anti-gravity field, the frame floated weightless yet perfectly level, held in suspension by the enchantments of the stand, seemingly far better than any nut or bolt could ever hope to hold it, as Leo looked satisfied with how it hung. Now the real work, Leo murmured ever so softly, as he disconnected the attached wire from the power core and crouched beside the levitating frame, his eyes narrowing as he brought the power core close to the integration socket on the rear. Right here. Slot 7 into column A. Pin 2 slides between rings 5 and 6, then twist the wire clockwise until the glyph pulses. His fingers worked fast but careful, threading minuscule joints with quiet precision as the soft ticking from the vault timer echoed behind him, each second like a drop of water falling onto the iron drum of his nerves. Meanwhile, at the guild headquarters ground floor lobby. Ding! Antonio stepped out of his private elevator, adjusting the collar of his coat as the marble-tiled elevator lobby greeted him with its usual grandeur. Without breaking stride, he raised his right arm and tapped lightly on a button hidden beneath the cuff of his sleeve, as he retrieved a weird-looking pin and slid it across elevator 3, to open it. Open. Its door slid open with no sound. Antonio stepped inside and crossed his arms, his expression unreadable, as he pressed the only button inside, which led to basement level 5. Vault chamber, timer, 1844. Leo aligned the final pin into the power core and waited, sweat beginning to bead at his temples. Click. A soft blue pulse ran across the frame, the signal that integration had succeeded. However, just integrating the power core was not enough. He had to start the stabilization procedure next, as he began pressing the stabilization nodes one after another, just like he had memorized from Argo's instruction letter. Elevator shaft, mid-descent. Antonio stared blankly ahead as the elevator hummed downward through layers of reinforced concrete. The descent was long, 12 minutes to basement level 5, not counting the minute-long corridor trek to the vault. His thoughts cycled back to the flicker he'd seen in the viewing mirror, as he made his own assumptions on what it could be. Body splitting into two could be the result of a cloning technique, or it could be the result of him moving so fast that the mirror could not catch his movement and instead showed him at two places at once for that brief split second. He theorized, as he tightened his jaw, his fingers curling at his sides. This elevator ride is taking too long. Vault chamber timer, 1452. Leo's hands moved in a blur, pressing the correct activation sequence buttons, so that when the portal was remotely activated, it wouldn't shift or destabilize with use. Now for the final trigger, he thought, as he very carefully pressed against the core's central rune. *BZZZZT, click. A low hum spread outward. The portal wasn't active yet, but the frame was now fully online, stabilized and ready for remote activation for the cult, with enough power for a 22-minute heist window. Item description: a high-grade instant teleportation device. Leo typed for the pedestal's description, as he disguised the frame as just another treasure in the room. Meanwhile, basement level 5. Antonio's boots echoed against the polished steel flooring as he stepped out of the hidden elevator. The two violet-marked operatives standing guard didn't move, but one nodded at him as he passed. His pace was calm, but his mind burned with certainty. He reached the reinforced hallway fairly quickly, undergoing no security checks like Leo, as he quickly reached the vault door, before placing his palm on the glyph panel, as the vault door depressurized. Vault chamber timer, 1258. Leo, still invisible, stood a few steps away from his clone, when suddenly hiss of depressurization began from the other side of the vault, causing his heart to jump into his throat. The fuck? He cursed, panic gripping every muscle in his body, before rationality returned. He dashed with all his speed, hoping that he had enough time to replace the clone before someone had a chance to scan the room. As for those few split seconds, he felt as if he was once again running away from the priest and the silver-armored knight of the time-stilled world, as time seemed to stretch endlessly for him for those handful of moments. Who could it be? And why are they here unannounced? He wondered, as with his eyes trained towards the vault's entrance, he used Storm Flash Traverse in a high-stakes gamble to replace the clone before someone entered. Just outside the vault door, Antonio's POV. The gate hadn't even fully opened when Antonio stepped forward, crossing the threshold with the measured calm of a man trained to trust his instincts more than his eyes, as his transcendent gaze scanned the vault chamber in a slow arc, analyzing every flicker of movement, every shift in temperature, every trace of mana that lingered unnaturally in the air. Vice Guildmaster? Leo asked, feigning surprise, his voice casual as he turned to face the older man with a half-smile, as though nothing in the world was remotely out of place. Antonio didn't respond immediately. His eyes swept the perimeter first, checking corners, checking shadows, checking for breath or heartbeat or heat signatures, basically anything that would suggest the presence of a second body or clone, but he found nothing suspicious on the surface, which only made him more alert than before. Found something you fancy? You don't have much more time left to choose, he asked Leo, as he looked straight into his eyes. There was a faint sheen of sweat on Leo's brow, that was subtle but not invisible, indicating to Antonio that he was anxious. There was also a slight flutter in his chest that exposed his steady breaths as nothing more than a forced act, which made it seem like he was trying too hard to appear calm. You look worried, Antonio said at last, his voice smooth, unhurried and deceptively friendly as he walked the room's perimeter with his hands clasped behind his back, eyes lazily drifting from one artifact to another. Everything all right? I'm fine, Leo replied instantly, his tone just as smooth, though slightly brighter, as if he was trying to overcorrect. I was just worried the oxygen might run out before the timer did, but, you coming in here probably gives me a few extra minutes. He replied, as he smiled kindly, probably, too kindly, which only deepened Antonio's suspicion. Tap, tap. Antonio's boots clicked against the mana-polished floor as he walked over to the corner near the pedestal, where Leo had crouched earlier to retrieve the keychain. There, he came to a pause, tilted his head, and inhaled slowly through his nose, his expression unreadable. Fart here, Skyshard? Antonio asked with a straight face, as Leo's face went blank at the question, as he chose not to respond. Antonio held his gaze for a second longer, then let it pass, moving on with the same quiet gait, though now his path gradually curved toward the far end of the chamber, where the frame floated silently on its new pedestal. Leo's breath hitched just slightly, his gaze following Antonio's every step. Fucker suspects something to be wrong, he realized at this moment, as he silently began charting a viable, storm flash traverse route in his head, from his current position to the vault door in a straight line, as he began preparing for the worst-case scenario. The older man said nothing. Just continued walking with calm and deliberate footsteps, pausing only to inspect another piece of treasure here, another glowing relic there, as he walked the full perimeter of the vault, his pupils always watching Leo from the corner of his eye. Seconds passed, and as Antonio inched closer and closer to the frame, Leo's heart began to thud louder, however, his fake smile stayed intact. Please be dumb. Please be dumb. Just walk past it, he prayed with desperation, and to his silent relief, Antonio did exactly that. Without even pausing near the pedestal, he continued walking as if the frame were just another artifact among many unimportant, unnoticed items, that were simply unworthy of his attention, as slowly, he looped around the chamber and returned to where Leo stood. You've still got time, Antonio said, his voice low as he walked past. Take a couple extra minutes since I interrupted, but make sure to get back out in time, I'll reset the timer to 15. He said before stepping through the door just as it began to seal again behind his back, the hiss of pressurization returning to full force as the internal timer flicked back to 1500. Fuck, that was close, Leo thought, as he let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Ha. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, finally letting his muscles relax just a little, as the familiar rush of adrenaline slowly began to taper off inside his chest. The mission was done and not even the Vice Guildmaster suspected something to be off, as his decision to install the frame atop the pedestal had worked off brilliantly. This means I'm clear. If Antonio didn't catch me, I'm probably gonna make it out alive. Leo realized, as only now, with every obligation and threat out of his way, did he finally turn to inspect the actual vault's contents, knowing that, at least for the next few minutes, he could afford to act normal. Meanwhile, just outside the vault, Antonio frowned deeply after exiting the vault's door, as he did not turn to acknowledge the saluting guards that stood at his flanks. Am I suspicious of that boy for no reason at all? Antonio wondered, as he tried to think whether or not he found anything objectionable within the vault, but he did not. Still, something about Leo's expression, calm on the surface, yet faintly rehearsed, continued to gnaw at the back of his mind like a splinter he couldn't dig out. Make sure he walks out with just one item, he said without turning to look at the guards, voice flat. Check him extra hard, mouth, throat and everything. Then, without another word, he walked away, his thoughts cycling in loops that even he couldn't quite untangle, as he wondered if he was simply becoming too paranoid as he grew older. For in hindsight, the entire trip to the vault had been a pointless detour, consisting of 12 wasted minutes, and nothing to show for it but a gut feeling he couldn't shake. Vault chamber, timer, 14:59. With Antonio gone, Leo stood alone in the treasure room, as he finally allowed his eyes to roam the chamber he had just risked everything to infiltrate. There were treasures everywhere, artifacts of every shape and size, some glowing, others dull and ancient, but two items stood out immediately to him, as in the entire room, while every other treasure was accessible and open to him. There were only two treasures that were sealed behind several layers of reinforced mana glass that he couldn't touch or open. And for that reason, he walked toward them first. His boots echoed softly against the pristine floor, until he came to a halt before the first sealed item. Blood of the evil cult dragon, Noah. A vial, no larger than his pinky, floated gently in the center of a reinforced containment field, its liquid still bright red with subtle swirls of gold that refused to settle, as though alive. The blood didn't look like any mortal essence, its texture more akin to smoke held in liquid form. I wonder why this is sealed, Leo thought, as the protective aura emanating from the glass made his skin crawl, even without touching it. As far as his knowledge about collecting blood of the deceased went, it was either useful for cloning an individual, or it was useful to inherit their bloodline powers. However, he wasn't sure of the exact procedure for either, so he moved to the second locked case. Scroll belonging to the timeless assassin, retrieved from evil cult dragon Noah. This sealed case was different from the one surrounding the vial, as instead of just a couple layers of protective glass surrounding it, Leo counted at least 7 for this one. The scroll itself hung unfloored and open, suspended mid-air and held in a constant state of revelation by anti-gravity magic. Leo stepped closer, eyes narrowing as he tilted his head and began reading the contents of the scroll line by line, each character instantly clear to him despite the ancient dialect. Temporal shift. That was the name of the technique, written in gold at the very top. It was a movement skill that defied the limits of possibility. The scroll spoke of velocity bordering half the speed of light, of folding space between movements, of stepping faster than sight, perception, or even cause and effect. It was, by every measure, the most complex and overwhelming maneuver he had ever seen. But then came the limitations. It required divine essence, a type of energy beyond his current reach. No mana channel could handle such speeds. No mortal bones could withstand the friction. No ordinary perception could guide it. Only a monarch or higher-tier warrior can ever hope to use this technique and survive to tell the tale, Leo realized, as he continued reading anyway, every muscle in his body subconsciously absorbing the postures, the flow diagrams, the spine-anchored breathing technique, and the high-speed compression stances etched into the scroll. It took him 5 minutes. 5 silent, undisturbed minutes to study every last inch of the scroll with razor focus, as if engraving the knowledge into his bones. And then he saw the final line. Greater than only those related to the timeless assassin by blood can perform this technique. Leo blinked, then stared a second longer, that line echoing louder than the ticking timer behind him. So that's why it's locked away and not in the personal arsenal of Dupravel Nuna, he realized, as even Monarch Dupravel, for all his power, couldn't use it. It wasn't just a matter of strength or cultivation, but rather blood and legacy. So this is what all the fuss was about, Leo whispered, not as a boast but in solemn recognition, as he backed away slowly and turned to the rest of the vault. 9:50. The timer flashed in the distance, the numbers now demanding urgency. Leo inhaled slowly and marched toward the next row of objects, determined to scan as much as he could, knowing he had just minutes left to pick something that could help him with the next phase of his journey. He read quickly. Soul Lantern of the Void Hermit. A sealed lantern that could reveal the aura trails of any dead being within a 10-mile radius. It worked once per day and burned all the mana in the user's body each time it activated. Gauntlet of the Spellbreaker Monk. A rust-colored glove etched with breaking runes. It allowed the wearer to nullify one magical construct per hour, whether it was barriers, enchantments, even illusions, by crushing them with bare hands. Beast Contract Ink. A vial of silver-black ink capable of forging an eternal contract with any one beast of your choosing. Only usable once. Cannot be undone. Fuses the soul of beast and master forever. Mirror of the Seventh Lie. A hand-sized mirror that reveals the greatest lie a person has ever spoken about themselves. Silent Reaper's Cloak. A plain gray cloak made of something lighter than air. Grants complete silence while moving, muffles footstep and heartbeat sounds, and allows the user to pass through minor barriers undetected. Leo's eyes flicked from one item to the next, each one rare, strange, and deadly in its own way. And yet, as the seconds ticked by, he could feel how none of these initial items he scanned were even remotely the right fit for him, as he began frantically moving to look for the perfect item. Come on, there has to be something worth taking from all these treasures that's worth billions of MP, and probably a one-in-the-universe item, Leo muttered under his breath, desperation mounting with every heartbeat. He knew that this choice wasn't just about value alone. It was about finding an item that aligned with his fighting style, with his instincts, with everything that made him uniquely dangerous. Or an item that would help him navigate the chaos of joining the cult, and improve his odds of survival dramatically. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Vault Chamber, Timer, 9:49. Leo's boots barely made a sound as he moved deeper into the chamber, scanning the next row of objects. Ring of the Ember Saint. A crimson band imbued with endless fire. Grants the user control over flame-based techniques, with immunity to all heat below 10,000 degrees Celsius. Pursuer's Air Bullet. A self-homing skill attack, which cannot be evaded and shall relentlessly pursue its target until it hits the target's body. Fleshroot Seed. A parasitic plant core. Once implanted, it slowly replaces dying tissue with regenerative bark, increasing survivability but gradually altering the host's physiology. Heaven's Prism Shell. A translucent orb that can absorb and release a single spell up to Monarch tier. Works only once and then shatters. Whisperer's Chisel. A cursed sculpting tool that reveals the hidden essence of any metal or stone it carves. Each use feeds a sliver of the user's mind to the chisel, and there's a chance that the creations made with this chisel gain partial sentience. Leo moved swiftly past them, admiring their design and descriptions, but nothing felt quite right for him to choose. He continued this process row after row, until suddenly, when he was inspecting objects near the leftmost wall of the room, his body suddenly began to glow with a faint golden aura, as he passed close to an old and rusted necklace. Leo wondered, as he couldn't believe that he spotted the sixth color of the codex in a place like this, or what that color even meant. But all he could be sure of was that he saw faint wisps of gold covering his body for a brief moment. I didn't even consciously plan to keep the codex active. But I guess at this point it has become a subconscious part of who I am, Leo mused, as he thought about how he did not even consciously pull mana behind his eyes to keep the codex active, but was doing so anyway out of habit. However, the question here wasn't why he saw the golden color, but rather what that color represented, as he turned his head and looked at the pedestal beside him, which seemed like it contained nothing more than an old and dust-covered chain. An old and rusted necklace. That was the entirety of the description. No more details. No explanation of what it did. As unlike every other item in the room, there was no glow, no magic signature, no aura to this object, nothing to suggest this belonged in a vault housing the rarest treasures of the known galaxy. What is this thing? And why was my body enveloped in a golden aura when I passed by it? Leo wondered, as he stepped closer, with his breath hitched. A golden hue, faint but unmistakable, began to thread its way from his chest, snaking outward toward the necklace like a slow-moving river of light. It was unmistakable now, for the closer he walked to the necklace, the stronger the golden aura became. Why? Why only this item? Leo wondered, his brows furrowing, heart beginning to pound again, as he anticipated that this golden aura had something to do with opportunity or good luck. His attraction towards this item wasn't mana-based. It wasn't even something that he had prior knowledge about, or something that caught his eye because of the description. But it was an attraction set up by the Sevenfold Revelation Codex. He moved side to side, testing the distance, confirming the aura's presence only near this specific item. Every time he stepped back, the thread faded. Every time he approached again, it returned, glowing more clearly now, as though recognizing him. No way, he muttered, voice low, as the timer ticked on. 8:11. It doesn't make sense, he thought. This item here has no description, no leaking energy, no proper record. It looks like junk. Why would this be in here? But the feeling gnawed at him. The necklace wasn't just random. It was deliberately placed. And the complete lack of description felt less like negligence, and more like someone intentionally hiding what it truly was. Fuck, do I really gamble everything on this? He could already imagine Antonio's face if he walked out holding this scrap of metal. But then again, why would the Codex ever respond so strongly to a fake? Sigh. Leo exhaled sharply and clenched his fists. No regrets, he muttered, as he reached out and picked up the necklace, the golden thread flooding fully into the metal the moment he touched it. It was warm, not with heat, but with familiarity. Like holding a memory he had long forgotten. And in that moment, Leo just knew he had made the right choice, for the necklace just felt right in his hands. Dash 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 dash. Meanwhile, Antonio on the elevator ride back up. Antonio folded his arms and leaned against the cold wall behind him, eyes half-lidded. He rarely allowed himself to feel nervous. But today, he was slightly nervous. Not just because Leo was inside the vault and his instincts told him that the boy was up to no good. But also because of what he might take out from it. Just don't pick either of the two, Antonio thought, closing his eyes for a moment. There were hundreds of priceless artifacts inside the vault, each of them rare, each of them powerful, but two items in particular haunted the back of his mind like ghosts from a vault keeper's worst nightmare. The first, Sun God's bracelet, a radiant wristlet bound in black gold, stolen from the corpse of Monarch Tier Guildmaster Evos during his duel with Dupravel Nuna. It was more than just a beautiful accessory, for it was functional, and terrifyingly so. It regenerated mana at double rate under sunlight, restored stamina in near real time, and could channel a devastating beam of compressed solar energy, enough to vaporize entire squads if fired on an open sky battlefield. It was, in every way, a weapon designed to dominate on sun-kissed planets, with an estimated value of 7.2 billion megapixels. And the second, indestructible necklace. The last known surviving remnant of the legendary indestructible armor set once worn by the dead god, Zula. While the other pieces of that 7-piece set had vanished into history, this one remained. By default, it provided permanent protection to the neck down to the lower chest, making the bearer immune to all penetration strikes when active. But that was only its basic mode. Its true strength was in its mobile mode, where the wearer could will the armor to manifest on any part of their body for a split second, allowing them to block even the most precise, high-speed penetration strikes by directing the armor's core effect to that point. And while the necklace without the support of the full set couldn't negate the impact force entirely, what it could do was ensure that penetration was impossible. The blunt trauma still passed through, sometimes shattering bones. But it made piercing and fatal strikes impossible by providing the user with a one-of-a-kind defense in the universe. Only a weapon forged from origin metal could destroy it outright, and it was only because the timeless assassin possessed daggers made from origin metal that he managed to kill the invincible Zula all those years back. No one can ever replace an artifact like that, not even with 1,000 years of trade and theft, Antonio thought, eyes narrowing slightly. Over the last 14 days, he had gone out of his way to erase the mana signatures of those two items, reset their vault descriptions, and have them both listed under false names with dull, non-glowing interfaces. Not enough to make them invisible, but enough to make any ambitious man or greedy prodigy glance past them, assuming them to be broken trinkets or old failures. I even swapped their positions, placing them between other lucrative items so that the boy would not focus on them too much. He sighed, as he hoped that Leo went for anything but one of those two items. Basement Level 5, Leo's POV. As soon as Leo walked out of the treasure vault, the guards stationed outside stepped forward without a word, their faces cold and unreadable, as though they'd been waiting for this exact moment with bated breath. Pause. Let us inspect you, one of them said, as the other had already begun moving, gloved hands sweeping up his arms, down his ribs, pressing against his legs and circling behind his neck in search of hidden treasure items, scrolls or gems. They didn't ask permission. They didn't need to. Leo remained calm, standing still as their fingers traced across his body like professional pickpockets in reverse, searching every inch for anything he might have smuggled out. They checked his mouth, his throat, his ears, his soles. And when they found nothing apart from the rusted necklace dangling from his neck, they exchanged a quick glance. Clear, clear. They stepped back in unison, as though the inspection had never happened at all, as though he hadn't just endured one of the most invasive checks of his life from a man, for the sake of walking out with what appeared to be scrap metal. Start walking back, the one on the right instructed, as they began to flank him once more on his way out of the vault. No words were spoken. Only the soft echo of boots against polished stone followed, as Leo was ushered through the secondary checkpoint, where yet another arcane scanner lit up the hallway in pale blue as it swept a horizontal band of light across his body. It chimed once. No red. No alarms. Leo exhaled softly, the necklace still tucked beneath his collar, cold against his skin like a coin left under moonlight. He was directed toward a curtained chamber to the side, where his original robes had already been laid out, freshly folded, and ready for him to slip into once more. He changed quickly, not because he was in any particular hurry, but because he wanted to get back into thick and private clothing as soon as possible. Once he was done, the guards resumed their silent escort, matching his pace step for step, not a second faster nor slower, until finally, the silver doors of the elevator shaft appeared in view. They didn't follow him inside. They simply stopped at the boundary, backs straight, eyes forward, with neither of them saluting nor speaking, as though his presence, and everything he might have chosen, had nothing to do with them anymore. Go, the one on the left said, as Leo stepped into the lift, and the door automatically hissed shut behind him. Elevator music. Elevator music began to play once more, as Leo was left completely clueless on whether the elevator was moving up, down or nowhere, as the long wait to reach the surface resumed. Dash 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 dash. 12 minutes later, Leo reached the ground floor lobby of the Black Serpent's headquarters, and walked straight out of the exit with the necklace hidden beneath his robes as a free man. Nobody stopped him. Nobody seemed to pay him any special attention, as he was allowed to walk out of the Black Serpent's headquarters, just like any other guild member. He was cautious to check for trails. Paranoid that someone may suddenly jump him from behind and try to assassinate him. However, nothing of the sort happened, as he made it back to his apartment building without facing any attacks. Upon reaching his apartment door, Leo did not enter immediately. Instead, he stayed rooted in place, his body turned slightly sideways, fingers barely brushing the edge of the lock as he activated absolute vision. A subtle pulse of mana rippled outward from his body, washing through the apartment walls, the ceiling, the floor, everything within a 30-meter radius suddenly laid bare before his mind's eye in full detail. No one in the corners. No mana signature in the bathroom. No heat signatures near the window. No living aura. And no signs of a threat. Only stillness. Only silence. He waited 3 more seconds just to be sure, his fingers tightening against the frame, before exhaling softly and turning the key. Click. The door creaked open as he stepped inside without a word, only to immediately lock it again behind him with both the bolt and the physical lock. And only then did his shoulders drop, just slightly. Leo made his way toward the wall-mounted cabinet, brushing past the sparsely decorated living space, as he reached for the second drawer, where his storage ring sat hidden beneath a pile of miscellaneous clothes. He slid it onto his finger without hesitation. A flicker of blue light later, the rusted necklace vanished, sealed inside the spatial fold of the ring, far away from prying eyes or possible interference. Only after securing it, did he allow himself to sit down on the bed, as he grabbed the sevenfold revelation codex from inside the storage ring. Flip. He flipped it open, heart still slightly pounding, as he couldn't wait to get out of this planet now, as fast as he could. Glow. The moment the codex's parchment was exposed to air, it responded. Golden ink bled across the page like molten sunlight, twisting and dancing as words slowly formed in their usual cascading elegance. dash 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 dash. Greater than, you have witnessed the sixth color of revelation, gold. Greater than, gold is not a reflection of power. Gold is not a measure of worth. Gold is a whisper of fate. Greater than, when the golden light wraps around your form, it means your path stands at a precipice. Greater than, it does not tell you where that path leads, only that it diverges from everything before it. Greater than, to see gold is to stand at the edge of destiny. Greater than, what you choose to pick, whom you choose to trust, or the road you choose to walk, will shape not only your life, but the lives around you. Greater than, gold offers no certainty. It offers only magnitude. Greater than, for fate does not promise fortune. It only promises consequence. Greater than, those touched by gold often rise higher, or fall farther, than any other. Greater than, heed this color with the reverence of a flame, beautiful, but able to burn. Dash 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 dash. The glow slowly faded. The codex turned silent again. But Leo didn't close it. He sat there for a long moment, thumb resting on the page, his thoughts distant. So it wasn't good luck that he saw at the vault, but rather fate. Fate that could prove to be both good or bad for him depending on the circumstances, as the only thing assured when the golden aura appeared was that choosing one way or the other may alter one's life forever. It represented a turning point. A fork in the road. So the necklace, it might get me killed as well, Leo thought, the realization settling cold and deep into his gut. For a moment, he cautiously activated absolute vision once more and began to check his surroundings for threats, as somehow his instinct screamed at him to not linger around on planet Twin Fang anymore. Well, I've done everything the cult wanted me to do, it's time to get the hell out of here now, Leo concluded, as he quickly began to pack his bags with only one thought in mind. Which was to get off this planet before fate caught up. Meanwhile, back at the Black Serpent headquarters, Vice Guildmaster Antonio's office. Antonio leaned back in his chair, finally alone in the dim silence of his private office. His fingers moved swiftly across the interface of his data slate, as he logged into the vault transaction logs to confirm the item Leo Skyshard had chosen. He sincerely hoped that it was an item of no significant value, something worth a few dozen million MP at best. However, his breath hitched when he found out what Leo had actually selected. Retrieved item, indestructible necklace. For a full 2 seconds, Antonio didn't move. Then, no, damn it, he roared, slamming his fist onto the long wooden desk hard enough to send a spiderweb of cracks racing across its surface. The data slate embedded within trembled, as Antonio clenched his teeth so tight, that his gums began to ache. Of all the fucking things. His hand shook as he gripped the edge of the table. That little bastard knew. He had to have known. He spat, fury overtaking disbelief. Nobody, and I mean nobody, in their right mind would have picked that item unless they knew exactly what it was and what it did. Without prior knowledge, why would someone pick an item with no proper description, no mana trace and no appealing looks? Antonio wondered, as something about this selection did not sit right with him. Somehow, he couldn't wrap his head around why Leo would make such a choice, as if he were put in Leo's situation, he would never do the same. This was planned for sure. He muttered, as he stood up now, his thoughts spiraling out of control. All that looking around, all that hesitation, it was likely just a front. An attempt to make this look like a spur-of-the-moment decision. Antonio's jaw flexed. But the reality is, he did not go in there to explore. He went in to collect the indestructible necklace. Antonio stopped, as he stared out of the office window overlooking the city. You're clever, Skyshard. I'll give you that. Smarter than most, even. But you don't understand the line between ambition and suicidal greed. He turned back to the desk, eyes glinting with a colder light now. You picked one of the 2 items I made sure no one could identify. You probably understood that I did not wish anyone to take it, but you took it regardless. And by doing so, you did not just cross the line. You pissed on it. A bitter breath escaped his lips. I was willing to value your life, and your favor for completing the near-impossible mission at 6.5 billion megapixels. That was the magic number. But now that you've taken something that surpasses that valuation, you've breached the good faith I had. And that gives me the license. A dark pause. To kill. He sat down again, slower this time, composing himself as he tapped a contact into his intercom panel. Beep. A low static hum answered. Frederick. Yeah. Antonio's voice dropped, razor sharp now. The kid took something he wasn't supposed to. You know what that means. Frederick didn't reply for a moment. Are we taking him out, boss? Yes we are, but not yet. We can't afford to make it obvious in case he's talking about it right now to other guild members. We first need to make sure that he's alone and that it looks like a robbery gone wrong, so that the idea that spreads is not that the guild can't be trusted but rather that having more wealth than you can handle can get you killed. Antonio instructed. As, understood, came the response from the other end. Retrieve the item. I don't care if you have to carve it off his corpse with a spoon. Just make sure we get it back by tomorrow before he has time to master it, or get any funny ideas about selling it. A click. The line went dead. Antonio exhaled again, rubbing his temple, but there was no relief in the gesture. Only a deep, simmering rage. Enjoy your final few moments alive, Skyshard, he muttered. Because tonight, you're going to learn why exactly you shouldn't bite off more than you can chew. After putting the codex back into his storage ring, Leo made a quick call to Mu Fan, informing her of the mission's success, before packing everything that he needed to take from the apartment and putting on the face-covering mask that he had bought from the store. Then, he slid open his apartment's window and jumped out while having Vanish active, as he used Blade Switch to descend silently, as he landed on the ground without so much as a sound. Land. Without glancing back, Leo immediately began making his way through the silent city streets with swift and calculated strides, as he stuck to the shadows and tried to minimize his presence as much as possible to slip out undetected. He did not pause at all, running at his top speed wherever he could, as his instincts continued to scream at him to move faster, as though someone, might catch up to him if he did not. His heart pounded like a war drum in his chest, louder than his footsteps, louder than the world around him, but he refused to let that fear touch his hands or cloud his eyes. He didn't stop. He didn't breathe easy. Not until the blinking lights of the private hangar bay finally came into view, a full 30 minutes later. Still masked, Leo approached one of the side terminals and waved down a freelance pilot, an older Terran man with a sunburnt neck and lazy eyes, who perked up instantly upon seeing the huge offer of 100,000 megapixels for an emergency trip. I'll give you 10,000 MP extra if we leave right now, Leo said, his voice deeper than usual as he tried to conceal it. The pilot didn't even blink. Done. Destination. Rodova. No stops. No questions. Get in. The ramp lowered, and Leo walked aboard, eyes scanning the empty corners of the craft twice over before finally stepping inside and locking the door shut behind him. He felt the rumble beneath his feet as the engines began to hum. Felt the faint sway of the world tilting. And only once the screen on the interior dashboard marked, exiting planetary gravitational field, did Leo finally let himself breathe. The anxiety hadn't gone away. The paranoia hadn't vanished, but the noose around his neck had loosened just enough for him to unclench his jaw. He sat in the far back of the small passenger bay and closed his eyes behind the mask, feeling the ship jolt into hyperspeed a few minutes later, tearing away from Twin Fang at a velocity no pursuer could match without a faster ship of their own. Just a few more minutes before I kill the pilot, Leo thought internally, as he waited patiently for hyperspeed to put some significant distance between them and planet Twin Fang, before he killed the pilot and redirected the plane to the coordinates that the cult had given him for rendezvous. 45 minutes ago, Frederick's paw, outside Leo's apartment. After being assigned the mission to eliminate Leo's Skyshard by the Vice Guildmaster, Frederick quickly traced his trail from the guild headquarters back to his apartment, completely unaware that Leo had already slipped away nearly 10 minutes ago. Upon reaching the apartment, He was about to take his usual position in the corridor just outside Leo's door, intending to wait till nightfall to break in and kill the boy, when he was suddenly alarmed by the fact that there was no trace of life inside Leo's apartment. Leo wasn't inside his room, and that made Frederick's brow twitch, as he couldn't understand what was going on. I clearly traced his trail from the headquarters to here. If he went back out of this door after returning, there should be a second trail running back out from here, but there isn't one, he noted, as he searched around for signs of faded Mana's signature, but found nothing. Weird, he thought, as he stepped forward and retrieved a thin pair of runic gloves from his coat pocket, sliding them on as he crouched before the door. Tap, tap, tapping one finger against the lock in a practiced rhythm, Frederick snuck a piece of molded wire into the lock, as he picked it open with ease. The kid used a double lock today, he muttered under his breath, as he stood up and pushed the door open to enter, only to be shocked when the door did not hinge open completely but was stopped midway by a chain. It was at this moment that Frederick froze from the implications of this, as he realized that there was something horrible that was afoot. No, it's chained. From inside, he wondered, as his stomach dropped. Well shit. He instantly backed away and glanced to the left. The apartment had one entry point and one exit. If the door was chained from the inside, then it meant that after entering his apartment, Leo didn't walk back out but had rather escaped through the window. Only thieves, or spies run out of windows, Frederick thought, as he did not waste another second. Crash. Asterisk. He slammed his shoulder into the door with a burst of mana, as he broke the chain and burst into the apartment with both hands raised, before casting an area sweep spell. Reverberation echo. Waves of mana pulsed outward, mapping the interior instantly. The bed was bare, the cabinet half empty, and there were no food utilities left lying around, as he seemed to have packed everything. Frederick's eyes narrowed as he scanned the wardrobe, from where Leo's daggers were now all gone, alongside his spare robes. Only the guild-issued uniform remained, hanging limply like a husk. He's on the run. The words escaped before his brain fully processed them, but they felt true, absolute. Frederick spun around and lunged toward the open window, leaping out as his body vanished midair in a blur of speed. His boots barely touched the rooftop as he activated the thermal residue tracker, a specialized hunter's technique that allowed him to follow faint aura traces through residual heat signatures and mana trails. There, he thought, as he spotted a faint trail that was fresh and moving eastbound with haste. He chased it without pause, dashing across rooftops like a starving hound on a blood trail, his breath steady, mind sharp, footsteps landing one after another in a rhythm built for pursuit. 10 minutes passed, then 20, until finally, Hangar Bay 3. Frederick skidded to a stop on the overlook of the launch platform, his head snapping up just in time to watch the tail-end glow of an engine vanish into the clouds. Not even 2 minutes gone. No, 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 no. He leapt down and sprinted across the platform, eyes locking onto the command center, where two startled employees turned toward the screaming man storming their booth. Logs. I need logs. Someone give me the motherfucking logs. Frederick bellowed, his voice raw with urgency as he slammed both palms against the desk, making their holopanels flicker. One of the staff stepped forward, firm but apologetic. I'm sorry, sir, no matter how much you scream at me, I cannot give you the log details. Unless you can present me with the necessary security clearance, I cannot break protocol. Frederick slapped his own face with both hands, dragging them down slowly, his nostrils flaring as rage curled into a snarl. Are you kidding me right now? I'm acting under direct orders from the Vice Guildmaster of the Black Serpents, and you're worried about clearance. Frederick spoke with anger, however, the employee did not budge. I understand, but without authorization from, he began, as Frederick put a finger to his lip and did not wait for him to end. Beep. He opened his intercom. Boss. It's me. He's gone. Escaped. Took a ship. What? They won't give me the logs. Putting you on speaker now, give the employee a good shout for me. A moment of silence. Then, give him the motherfucking logs. The voice of Vice Guildmaster Antonio exploded from the speaker, sharp enough to make both employees jump. Yes, sir. The lead tech stammered, immediately pulling up the manifest as his fingers flew across the console. 1 private departure. Hangar Bay 3. No crew listed except 1 freelance pilot. Destination: Planet Rodova. Frederick's fists clenched. Planet Rodova. He was headed straight back to the Academy. The window was closing fast. I need one of the fastest Galaxy-class interceptors in our fleet. Right now. Use Vice Guildmaster Antonio's authorization. The technician hesitated only for a heartbeat before nodding. Frederick turned on his heel, storming toward the launch pad with his coat billowing behind him. You're not getting away that easily, Skyshard. I don't care if I have to chase you across a dozen star systems. I will gut you mid-flight if I have to. But I am completing this mission. Frederick resolved, as he quickly went searching for the fastest plane and a competent pilot. As within 20 minutes of Leo departing, he took a ship to chase after him as well. Somewhere on a Mu clan-controlled planet, Mu Fan's POV. Lord 12th, I have just been contacted by Skyshard, Mu Fan reported softly, her gaze lowered as the Elder's holographic projection flared to life in front of her. The 12th Elder did not speak. He simply stared. And so, she continued. The mission was a success. The dimensional portal link has been established, and he's currently en route to the designated meetup zone. The patrol ship is already in position. He should arrive in under 2 hours. A long silence followed. Then, slowly, the Elder's expression began to shift. His shoulders eased just slightly, as a small smile crept up the corners of his lips. I see, he murmured, his voice carrying the weight of something between relief and pride. It's been a long time since someone delivered this cleanly on a mission of that scale, but if it's the future dragon who carried it out, then of course he succeeded, he added with quiet satisfaction, as the smile on his face deepened. Mu Fan remained still for a moment before raising her eyes to meet his, her face devoid of the same joy that now animated his own. There was something about Leo's immediate future that had been gnawing at her for the past 2 days. Ever since she discovered the change in plan, the discomfort had grown steadily. And although she had held her tongue until now, today, she chose to speak her mind. If you don't mind, may I offer a warning, 12th Elder? Regarding your decision to have him visit Tithia before his family, I humbly ask you to reconsider. The Elder's eyes sharpened in an instant. His features tightened with quiet disdain, as he raised a single hand in curt protest. Enough, he said with finality, and in that instant, the air around Mu Fan seemed to grow colder. You have done well so far as Skyshard's handler, Fan. But if you continue to behave so belligerently, then I will have no choice but to replace you. Mu Fan's breath hitched, her spine stiffening instinctively. The 12th Elder leaned forward ever so slightly, his words now cutting with calm and deliberate precision. It is not your place to tell me how I groom the next dragon. That prerogative lies with the Elder's Council and the Elder's Council alone. His gaze bore into hers, unrelenting. Do not forget that. The only reason I inform you of my plans is because I expect your support in executing them smoothly and not because I value your opinion on how they should be shaped. So know your role and stay within it, he said coldly, before disconnecting the call in a quiet huff. Click. The projection vanished, leaving behind only the low flicker of the communication crystal and a slow, growing tightness in Mu Fan's chest. I still think you're making a mistake, she thought, as her hands slowly dropped to her sides, her fingers curling tightly into fists. They had made a promise to Leo. A promise that after retrieving him, the cult would take him to planet Vorthus to see his family. But now, with the Elder's sudden decision to divert him to Tithia first, that promise was on the verge of being broken. To alter the destination without warning, without so much as a discussion, risked turning what should have been a moment of trust into one of betrayal. Knowing exactly how little faith Leo already had in the cult, Mu Fan could feel the danger in this decision with every fiber of her being. To her, it felt like a blunder waiting to happen. A move capable of fracturing everything they had so painstakingly built with Leo. Because the Leo of today was no longer a pawn. He was a dragon candidate, one who stood on the cusp of coronation, and the road forward demanded cooperation rather than coercion. I really hope the Elder is wiser than me, Mufan whispered under her breath. I sincerely hope that I'm still too young to know what's best for the cult. Her voice trailed into silence, as she turned and walked out of the secure room with disappointment pressing firmly against her chest. Dash 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 dash. Aboard the cult's undercover patrol ship, Officer Jaden's POV. A faint blue light flickered within the control chamber of the cult's patrol vessel, its walls humming quietly with stable mana flow as Officer Jaden stood at attention before the main console, waiting for the encrypted call to connect. Beep. The transmission snapped into clarity. The 12th Elder's face appeared on the screen, his demeanor as stable as ever, though there was an undeniable hint of excitement in his eyes. Officer Jaden. The mission to retrieve the lost scroll is a go. The future dragon has completed his part of the plan perfectly, the Elder declared without preamble, his voice firm and decisive. Jaden's eyes lit up, and he immediately lowered his head in a crisp salute, his fist pressed against his chest with ceremonial precision. Praise be to the future dragon, we shall not let his efforts go to waste, he said, as the call ended just as abruptly as it had begun. But that was all the confirmation he needed, as spinning around, Jaden clapped his hands loudly, his voice booming through the narrow metallic corridors of the vessel. You heard the Elder. This is not a drill. We are greenlit. Move to your stations and prep the shuttle. A wave of energy coursed through the crew. The tense silence that had gripped the patrol ship for the past few hours gave way to an atmosphere of sharp focus and thinly veiled excitement, as cloaked figures dashed through the halls with practiced efficiency, strapping on gear, checking weapons, and syncing mission clocks. Jaden entered the deployment chamber, where a smooth black shuttle was already humming to life, marked with counterfeit delivery insignias, as the smaller mission ship masqueraded as one of the standard delivery vessels belonging to the Universal Logistics Corps. 12 soldiers boarded, all in black-tinted armor, their faces hidden behind shaded helmets, as they performed one final equipment check. Masquerade protocol is in full effect. Air control on planet Twin Fang has been informed of a delivery ship with your code expecting to enter their airspace. We are a full-blown courier ship on paper now, one of the cult techs reported calmly, flashing a thumbs up, as Jaden nodded. Good. Keep comms on silent until we hit the atmosphere. No risks. Today's the day we retrieve our lost pride. Yes, sir. A low hiss filled the chamber as the patrol vessel's lower hatch opened, exposing a launch tunnel that jutted out toward the vastness of space. Whir. Click. The undercover logistics shuttle detached smoothly from the belly of the patrol ship and entered half-hyperspeed instantly, its core engine running at dampened intensity to avoid suspicion. Jaden stood by the window, arms crossed, as he watched the sleek craft vanish into the black of space, the faintest curl tugging at his lips. The future dragon had handed the cult an unprecedented golden opportunity, one they had been waiting nearly 3 decades for. And it was up to him and his team now, to complete what the dragon had already begun. Lord Future Dragon, you seem like a capable man. I can't wait to serve under you soon, Jaden said, as he hoped for the day where he could enlist under the future dragon's army, and join him to rebel against the righteous faction. Somewhere in deep space, aboard the private craft headed for Rodova, Leo's POV. A few minutes after the craft had left the gravitational field of Twin Fang planet, and was sufficiently deep into space, Leo finally left his seat and walked towards the captain's cabin with calm steps. He combed his hair back with his fingers, his expression relaxed, as he approached the door and pretended to enter in a nonchalant way, his posture loose, his gait measured, as he did everything in his power to not spook the man behind the controls. The captain glanced back briefly as Leo stepped in, offering a casual nod before returning to the console. Leo returned the nod politely and walked over, stopping just behind the pilot's chair. How long until we reach Rodova? He asked casually, as though he were simply bored and making conversation to pass the time. About 12 hours, the captain replied, checking a dial. The route's clear of any asteroid or floating comets and there are no nebula clouds in our current trajectory, so this should be a pretty smooth ride. Leo tilted his head slightly, feigning mild interest. And this is as fast as you can go. Already pushing her to the edge, my friend, the man said with a chuckle. Any more and the regulators'll throw a fit. You don't want to burn out the monocoils mid-transit. Leo gave a quiet hum in response, as if satisfied. You know, I always wanted to know what that small red button, Leo began, as he pointed towards a specific button on the console with one hand, drawing the pilot's attention towards it. While with the other, he stabbed him. Splat! A silver flash streaked through the air as the dagger plunged straight into the side of the captain's neck. The man's smile didn't even have time to vanish before his eyes glazed over, a spray of blood coating the control board as he gurgled once and collapsed forward. Leo caught the body before it could hit the floor, laid it to the side, and slid effortlessly into the command seat. The pilot's lifeless fingers twitched once before going still, but Leo paid it no mind. Instead, he reached over the blood-smeared console and began tapping in a new flight route, the coordinates provided to him by the cult stored in the corner of his mind like a sacred script. A few seconds later, the ship's trajectory shifted. The artificial gravity hummed as the engines adjusted course, veering away from the Rodova-bound route and heading toward the barren void ahead. Ding! A small blinking message appeared on the corner of the screen. Estimated journey time, 19 minutes. Leo leaned back in the captain's chair and exhaled softly, his fingers resting against his chin as he stared out into the distant stars. All he had to do now was wait, and in roughly 19 minutes, he would arrive at his intended destination. About half a solar system away, Frederick's POV. In the cockpit of the Black Serpent chase craft, Frederick's sharp eyes stared intently at the blinking screen before him. A red triangle had just appeared on the edge of the radar sweep, pinging faintly as it moved through a quiet sector of space. There, he muttered. That's him. The pilot nodded. Craft Idaho 20H3 bound towards Rodova, that's indeed the craft we are supposed to chase. Frederick's eyes narrowed. At their current speed, they would catch up to the craft ahead in roughly 7 to 8 minutes. But then, something unexpected happened. The red triangle suddenly drifted off course, as if it had changed its flight path without warning. Instead of heading toward Rodova, it began to veer toward a less populated sector of the starfield. A region that had no habitable planets for at least a couple days' worth of journey ahead. Why? Frederick whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Why has the direction suddenly changed? The pilot turned toward him. Should we follow? Of course. Stay on him. Don't lose visual, Frederick ordered quickly, his mind already spinning through possibilities, none of which he liked. A moment later, as the distance between the two crafts reduced to under 4 million kilometers, which was the maximum range at which inter-flight radars worked, the pilot of Frederick's craft finally tapped into the communications system and sent out a ping. Black Serpent Craft 20H3, please come in. I repeat, Craft 20H3, do you copy? He requested, but received no response. Black Serpent Craft, this is a pursuit ship sent by Vice Guildmaster Antonio. Please stop at once if you copy, the pilot warned, his voice tense as he waited. But once again, there was no response from the craft ahead. The pilot turned back to Frederick, uncertain. Still nothing, sir. Try again. Change frequency, Frederick said, jaw tightening with each passing second. The pilot nodded and cycled through 3 more channels, sending the same message repeatedly, but they all ended in silence. The craft ahead is not responding, but we are closing in on them. We should be right at their tail in 2 minutes, the pilot informed. Frederick nodded, expression unreadable as he stood behind the pilot and stared straight ahead. The next 2 minutes passed by in a focused blur, the silence in the cockpit thick enough to be felt, as the rogue shuttle loomed larger and larger in their forward view. Once they were directly behind it, Frederick leaned in slightly. Try again. One last time. This time, let them know that if they don't stop immediately, we'll shoot them out of space. Yes, sir. The pilot flipped a switch and transmitted with a hardened tone. Craft 20H3, if you don't stop now, we will blow you to pieces. I repeat, we will blow you to pieces. The words hung in the air for a few seconds, but there was still no answer. Another 3 nerve-wracking minutes passed. The chase craft now flew directly above the rogue shuttle, its full silhouette visible through the main viewport, gliding silently ahead like a ghost. Frederick stood behind the pilot, arms crossed, his fingers twitching at his side. "I don't like this," he muttered under his breath. "Why the silence? Why did the course change? What the hell are you planning, Skyshard?" A quiet tension settled into his chest as his mind weighed the options. On one hand, he did not actually want to blow the craft to pieces, because that would make recovering the item Leo had stolen nearly impossible amongst all the craft debris. However, letting him continue forward like this, toward unknown coordinates and with unknown motives, was also something Frederick could not allow. Something needed to give, and so, Frederick made his choice. He stepped forward and issued one final command. "Point the mana guns towards their rear thrusters, the aim is to disable and not destroy." The pilot acknowledged, fingers flying across the console as the ship's weapons locked on. Frederick's gaze never wavered from the craft ahead, his instinct screaming at him that whatever Skyshard was planning, it needed to be stopped before it was too late, or the damage it would cause would be irreversible. Back to Leo's POV, aboard craft H-203. Leo sat comfortably in the bloody craft cockpit, as he waited to reach the rendezvous point without any hiccups, when a voice suddenly crackled through the comms panel. "Black Serpent Craft 20H3, do you copy? Please respond. This is Captain Makwana of the pursuing vessel dispatched by Vice Guildmaster Antonio." Leo's eyebrow twitched. "Oh, for fuck's sake," he muttered under his breath, dragging a hand down his face as he stared at the source of the voice. "I knew in my gut that someone was following me." He had hoped his escape from Twin Fang would be clean. Had hoped that his escape raised no major alarms or red flags to make the Black Serpents chase after him. But fate clearly had other plans, for someone had picked up his trail and was still red-hot on it. "Craft 20H3, please come over the radio, this is not a request. Not responding to a senior officer is a crime. State your status immediately, or we will shoot you down." The other pilot threatened, as suddenly red warning signs began to flash on every control panel in front of him, with the ship warning him that some enemy had them locked for an attack. Sigh. Leo exhaled sharply through his nose, his fingers drumming against the armrest. Expected time before arrival, 3 minutes 48 seconds. The countdown to the rendezvous point with the cult patrol ship ticked forward slowly, and Leo's mind began to wonder as to how he could make it to that point without being shot at. "All right, let's play the innocent bystander act," he mumbled, before opening the comms channel, his voice suddenly panicked, as he pretended to stumble over his words. "Hello. I hear you," he began, forcing a frantic tone. "There's something wrong with the pilot. He collapsed. I think he's having a seizure or a heart attack or something, I don't know." The other side went silent for a moment, then responded. "This is Captain Makwana. Am I speaking to Leo Skyshard?" "Yes, I'm Leo Skyshard. I don't know anything about flying this thing. I came to check on him, and he was just convulsing, the ship was veering, I panicked." He even added a shaky breath for effect. Frederick, listening quietly from the command seat behind his pilot, narrowed his eyes as Makwana glanced back for confirmation. The story doesn't add up. A craft locked on its path to Rodova would not veer off course even if the pilot dozed off. Unless there was a navigation failure, Frederick muttered. Still, Makwana nodded and spoke again. "Okay, remain calm. We'll guide you through stabilizing the ship. First, you need to identify your current throttle and hyperspeed state. Do you see a yellow button near a black thrust lever?" Leo kept his face serious, hand hovering over the exact button, already familiar with its layout. "What? No, wait. Could you explain again? There's so many buttons on the console, everything's flashing red with warning that weapons are locked onto this ship. You need to find a yellow button beside the thrust lever," Makwana repeated slowly. "Press the yellow button to disengage the hyperspeed drive, then slowly pull the lever back to reduce speed." Leo blinked. "Arrival time, 1 minute 12 seconds. "Copy, I think I see it," he said vaguely, stretching the syllables as much as possible. "You said Pull then press the yellow button. No. I said press the yellow button, then pull. Makwana repeated the instruction a third time. Leo delayed even further, staring at the screen, watching as the estimated arrival dropped to 50 seconds. Copy. Okay. I think I got it now, he said, finally reaching out and pressing the yellow button, then inching the lever back ever so slightly. Outside, the craft's engine let out a subtle shift in tone as its momentum slowed. Frederick's ship, still trailing behind and mirroring the movement, began to slow as well. Maintain distance and track speed, Frederick said, his voice low, gaze narrowed at the ghostly outline of Leo's ship. Makwana was about to respond again when suddenly, the space around them changed. A burst of pressure rippled through the starfield, silent yet undeniable, as from the shadows of a drifting asteroid field ahead, an enormous craft phased into view, its black hull gleaming with a quiet menace, the surrounding light bending around it as if refusing to touch it. The cult's patrol ship had arrived, and Frederick's chase craft didn't even have time to process it, for they could not spot the ship on their radar. Flash! A flash of bright white energy surged forth from the hidden vessel, its beam concentrated, quiet, and absolutely merciless. In one instant, the Black Serpent chase craft was reduced to fragmented metal, its engines erupting in a cloud of violet and ash, as the explosion scattered across vacuum with no sound but all the fury of a star imploding. Inside his cockpit, Leo watched the burst of firelight with an excited expression. It was about time that the cult did something right, and thankfully they understood their mission here perfectly. Good job, he said, as he leaned forward slightly, tapped a few keys to disable the red alert warnings, and wiped a bit of dried blood from the armrest beside him. Then, as the guiding beacon from the cult patrol ship flickered on screen, he adjusted course slightly and angled the ship into their magnetic pull for docking. Well, sayonara Black Serpents, he murmured, voice soft and cold, as he finally breathed a sigh of relief. The stars shifted slowly from his view, as his ride glided inside the hull of the cult patrol ship, its underbelly closing as soon as Leo's craft was inside, as the air pressure inside the docking area restabilized. Leo rose slowly from the captain's chair, brushing non-existent dust from his robes as he adjusted the collar and tightened the straps on his utility belt, his expression unreadable. He stepped through the exit ramp without hesitation, boots clinking softly against the graded walkway as the scene that unfolded before him was not one that he had expected. Rows upon rows of soldiers, engineers, robed technicians, and maintenance workers lined the massive hangar bay, all standing in perfect formation on either side of the corridor that led from his craft to the inner sanctum. Some of them cried softly when they gazed towards him, some dropped to both knees in a show of respect, while the rest simply stood frozen, their eyes wide and shimmering with something that caught him completely off guard. Adoration. Pure, unfiltered, almost frightening in its intensity. Cheers erupted like a wave, but it was not the kind of applause he was used to. There was no bravado, no chaos. It was solemn, worshipful. They looked at him as if a savior had stepped down from the stars. As if he were not merely a man walking among them, but a figure out of prophecy finally returned to fulfill a promise no one else understood. And it sent a chill crawling down his spine. With every step he took forward, the reverent silence between the cheers deepened, thickened, as if the weight of their hopes was being laid at his feet. Leo didn't speak. He didn't raise a hand or acknowledge the crowd. He simply walked, expression hard and calm, even as his gut twisted with 1,000 unspoken questions. Because no matter how many corpses he had stepped over to reach this point, this was not the welcome of a killer. It was the welcome of a messiah. And that felt far more dangerous. Leo's paw, aboard the cult patrol ship. Leo followed silently as two cloaked attendants led him through the metallic corridors of the patrol ship, their boots tapping softly against the spotless floor. Every turn they took revealed another hallway lined with curious eyes, all of them pausing in their duties to glance at him from behind terminals and bulkheads. Some pretended to be working, only to glance sideways the moment he passed. Others stared openly, unabashed in their awe. Wherever he passed, conversations halted mid-sentence. A few whispered behind their hands, and one woman even giggled openly before quickly silencing herself, cheeks flushed as her eyes met Leo's briefly. He felt like a creature being paraded through a glass cage. A creature who was not feared but rather worshipped. The attention made his shoulders tighten slightly, as although he did not enjoy such reverence even slightly, he somehow managed to keep his expression neutral. By the time they reached the far end of the ship, the corridor widened into a curved antechamber with silver-paneled walls and soft ambient lighting. A single door slid open soundlessly, revealing what could only be described as a captain's quarters, for it was the biggest and best furnished of all other rooms on the ship. It was basic in its design, having only one bed, one cabinet, one table and one chair, however the furnishings were undoubtedly high quality and premium finished. Leo stepped inside slowly, eyes flicking across every detail. "My lord, please rest here," said the man who had been walking slightly ahead of him. He wore a deep blue uniform adorned with silver trim and a 7-pointed star on the collar. His voice was formal, yet trembling with something Leo couldn't quite place. "We will arrive at our destination in approximately 30 hours, the man continued, lowering his head into a deep bow. "This is Landon. He has been assigned to stand outside your door. He will not allow any disturbance to reach you. If you require anything at all, food, drink, clothing, information, please let him know." Leo nodded, not saying a word. The captain bowed once more, then stepped back and allowed the door to slide shut behind him, leaving Leo in the quiet, dimly lit room. He remained standing for a long moment, his fingers twitching faintly at his side, his eyes locked on the plush bedding and golden glow of the room. It was too soft, and far too quiet for his liking. He felt no comfort in this luxury, no ease in the reverence. Only a crawling sense of being watched, even when alone. Like somewhere, just out of sight, someone was observing every movement and scribbling notes about his preferences, his silence, his gaze. He took a slow breath and sat down on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, fingers steepled together as he stared at the closed door. Outside, Landon stood at rigid attention. Inside, Leo felt the weight of every pair of eyes that had followed him through those hallways still lingering on his skin. And though the mattress was soft and the lighting gentle, he knew he would not rest easy tonight, not in this ship at least. "I hope I see my family soon," Leo hoped, as he finally lay down on the bed, and relaxed his muscles, letting the tension that had been a constant on his body for the past few days finally melt away. Officer Jaden's Pav, near Twin Fang Planet airspace. The disguised cult vessel drifted silently through the void, its appearance humble and unassuming, nothing more than a civilian-grade delivery ship by all exterior scans. But beneath the false plating, 12 powerful cult soldiers stood at the ready for a heist. Officer Jaden stood near the back of the cockpit, armored in sleek matte gear, a dark helmet tucked beneath one arm as he monitored the holographic readings. His expression was calm but alert, eyes sharp with focus as the ship steadily approached Twin Fang's orbit. Once the planetary sensors pinged their clearance for low-priority docking, Jaden turned to the onboard crew. "We'll breach in under 2 minutes. Calm your nerves, there can be no mistakes now," he instructed, as the others nervously tapped their feet and rubbed their hands. The moment the ship reached the minimal required distance from the Black Serpent Vault's dimensional anchor point, Jaden quickly unfolded the portal diagram given to him by Master Argo, and powered it with 4 high-grade mana stones to start the connection. Brr! A soft hum filled the air, as the portal diagram onboard the ship made connection with the portal frame inside the vault, opening a dimensional gate. "We have approximately an 18-minute window," Jaden said sharply, pressing the countdown timer on his wrist console. "Everyone sync mission clocks with me now." Chick. One by one, the 11 soldiers behind him tapped their gauntlets, aligning their clocks with his. In silence, they donned their oxygen masks, checked their gear, and prepared to step through. Jaden took the lead, diving into the portal without hesitation. The transition was instant. His boots landed softly on a polished floor, the temperature chilled and the atmosphere silent. Around him, the vast inner vault of the Black Serpent Guild stretched like a cathedral of greed. Treasures floated gently in stasis fields, suspended via anti-gravity runes. Weapons, artifacts, ancient stones, crystal orbs, glittering gems, everywhere he looked, the air was thick with unguarded wealth. One by one, his soldiers emerged behind him, weapons drawn, eyes wide. Jaden didn't need to speak. Hand signs. He moved his fingers in a tight, deliberate sequence, signaling the plan. 3 men, including himself, would move for the target scroll. The rest cleared the chamber of as much loot as they could fit in their storage rings. The team dispersed in perfect formation. Looting squads moved swiftly, sweeping artifacts into their storage rings without any resistance, as if the vault had never been designed for theft from within. Jaden, meanwhile, darted toward the far end of the room where a narrow glass enclosure pulsed with protective runes. Within, hovering atop a black velvet stand, was the scroll, sealed behind 7 distinct layers of thick transparent glass, each layer humming with its own defense circuit. He threw more hand signs. The soldier to his left quickly unlatched a small vial from his belt. Inside sloshed a greenish-black liquid, thick as tar, with tiny bubbles that fizzed violently even within containment. Ancient swamp frog poison. Jaden took a step back as the soldier popped the vial's seal and, with surgical precision, poured its contents along the seam of the outermost glass panel. SSSSHHHHH. A hiss erupted as smoke poured upward. The poison clung to the glass and began eating through the molecular weave, the surface sizzling and cracking slowly under its weight. Then, crack, the first layer gave out with a clean, brittle shatter. And instantly, the vault's ambiance changed. VREEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEE. The lights overhead shifted from soft white to blazing crimson. Alarms screamed across the vault with feral intensity, drowning out every other sound in the room. Jaden didn't flinch. He had expected this, but that did not make it any less dangerous. He tapped his communicator once and made a slicing gesture with 2 fingers, as immediately, 2 soldiers stopped the looting process, tossed their loot rings to their colleagues and stepped towards the vault's entrance door, ready to guard it with their lives. These 2 were going to be the last to leave, alongside Jaden, as while the others were instructed to leave as soon as their part of the mission was completed. Jaden and the 2 of them could only leave with the scroll, or not at all. Vault Chamber, Twin Fang Planet. VREEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEEE spread across the walls, bathing the once pristine vault in a hellish glow. The temperature felt like it had risen by 10 degrees, and the air inside tasted like static. Officer Jaden's heart pounded against his ribs as he gave another sharp hand signal. The cult operatives moved with manic efficiency, their boots thundering across the polished floor as they grabbed the last of the treasures floating in their stasis fields. Storage rings flickered, locking down weaponry, rare minerals, ceremonial relics, anything they could grab. They had mentally prepared for this operation for the past 10 days. And for the first 60 seconds after the alarm began to ring, it almost seemed like the team would pull the heist off without any fatality or consequence. But then came the glass panels built around the scroll. Jaden wiped sweat off his brow as he turned back toward the pedestal. 3 layers of the reinforced security casing had been shattered already. Poison, brute force, even a few mana-based spells had helped. But the 4th layer, it wasn't budging at all. No matter how hard they hit it, sprayed it, or tried to smash it, that 4th layer simply did not break. "Move, let me hit it with all my strength," one soldier shouted, jabbing his blade forward with kill thrust. But although the point of contact sparked violently against the casing, the glass did not so much as crack, as all it did instead was send a tremor through the cult operative's wrist. "If you can't stab through it, you might wanna slice it," another grunted and brought his longsword down in an overhead arc, a heavy slash that should have cleaved through steel. However, the glass still refused to break. "It won't hold forever," Jaden muttered under his breath, though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. Seconds felt like hours. The air inside the vault grew thinner as the automated defense systems began to partially depressurize the chamber. A low hiss filled the room, and the lights began to flicker. Then, the sound they had all been dreading could be heard down the corridor. Footsteps. And not the clumsy kind. These were measured, militarized. Boots with weight, discipline, and fury behind them. Go, 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 Jaden barked, waving his hand frantically as the remaining members of the looting squad sprinted toward the still active dimensional portal. One by one, they disappeared into the gate, their armor and gear flashing in the strobe-like red light of the vault. While Jaden himself turned back to the scroll. Enough of this, he said to himself, as he stopped trying to crack the protective glass and focused on the base supporting the whole damn thing instead. If he couldn't have the scroll directly, then he decided to take the entire goddamn pedestal with him instead. Clang! His blade sank through the steel beneath the pedestal. It wasn't clean. Sparks flew everywhere. The runes protecting the base screamed in protest. But the structure wobbled. Another slash. Then another. But by the time he was done slashing just halfway through the base, the vault door finally opened, as black serpent guards started to pour through. Ching! Ching! Clang! The sound of clashing metal and mist attack spells filled the chamber, as the two remaining cult operatives guarding the vault entrance tried their best to buy time for their commanding officer to escape. Come on! Come on! Come on! Jaden said to himself as he sliced the pedestal clean off with one last full-powered slash, before lifting it over his shoulder in a full-bodied heave. Hayyahh. His bones strained, muscles screamed, but adrenaline carried him. He ran. Each step felt like a mile. The weight slowed him, but he didn't let go. He could see the gate now. Just a dozen more strides and he would make it. He would bring the scroll home. But then, a shadow moved. A shadow of a man running on all fours. A beastly man. One that had not even been within the vault a second ago. Jaden barely had time to react. In a blur of motion, he felt an icy pain explode through his chest. His body convulsed. His knees gave way. His eyes widened as he looked into the face of Dupravel Nuna, the guildmaster of the Black Serpents, who looked furious to see that some rats had managed to infiltrate his vault. You, rat, you, think you can steal from me? Dupravel mouthed in fury, as he tried to tear Jaden's body in half. Blood poured out from Jaden's mouth as he tried to say something, anything, but nothing came out. The pedestal slipped from his grip and landed with a heavy thud behind him, rolling once before stopping just short of the portal. There was no way in hell he could fight against a monarch like Dupravel with a hole in his chest, and hence he did not even try. However, looking at how the dimensional portal was still active and how Dupravel could probably get to his team if it was left open, Jaden took a last breath and pointed his fingers towards the portal frame. Mana gathered at his fingertips. And in one final act of heroism, he sent out a razor-sharp wind blade from his fingertips, as it sliced through the air before slamming into the outer rim of the portal frame. Zzzzzt. The frame crackled violently, the damaged conduction circuit losing power, as the connection collapsed and the portal vanished. Tear. Dupravel tore Jaden in half like an animal, splitting him down the middle like he was made of Play-Doh rather than bones and muscles, as his blood splattered everywhere. The last thought that passed through Jaden's fading mind was not of failure or regret, but a quiet relief. At least the others escaped, he thought, dying with a small smile, as his torn body was left with a half-grin on both sides. His blood pooled beneath, as Dupravel stepped over his body and picked up the fallen pedestal. What mine? No one take, he declared, as by now the other Black Serpent security guards managed to take down the other two cult members as well. As in the end, the mission to steal the scroll ended in a failure. Meanwhile, on the other side of the portal, the rest of Jaden's team eagerly awaited his return with bated breaths, until the portal connection collapsed, and he still did not show up. For a while, nobody spoke, as nobody could believe that even after everything, they had still failed. However, in the end, no matter how much they wanted to deny it, the truth of the matter was that they had failed, despite the dragon opening a clear route for them to get the scroll back. Despite the days of planning, the disguised courier ship, the dimensional portal made by Master Argo, and the perfect breach, they had still failed. Well fuck. We were so fucking close. How can we even fuck this mission up? The youngest in the squad finally spoke up, as he threw up his hands in frustration. However, although everyone in the squad mirrored his emotion, nobody really had the answer to how they could fail, as every single one of them was asking themselves the same damn thing right now. In theory, it was impossible for Dupraval Nuna to reach the vault room from his office in under 5 minutes, since the elevator ride to the basement itself took 12. However, being the man-beast that he was, Dupraval had torn open the base of the lift with nothing but his bare hands, as he leapt into a dangerous free fall to reach basement level 5 faster than what was humanly possible. And it was perhaps this unconventional leap by Dupraval that saved the Black Serpents from the fate of having their most precious treasure stolen, for although the rest of the vault room was emptied, the invaluable scroll still remained in their possession. What happened here? How did the cult members manage to teleport directly inside the vault? Antonio asked in a huff, as he arrived at the vault room a full 30 seconds after Dupraval had. By the time he arrived, the cult members left behind were already dead, and the treasures already long gone, as he found himself staring at a mostly empty room, except for a few blotches of red blood. Dupraval said nothing. He only stared at Antonio with his teeth bared in anger, snarling and hissing like a cornered predator, as if he expected more from his number 2. Skyshard, Dupraval muttered, pointing towards the frame, and it was only then that Antonio connected the dots, his eyes narrowing in fury as realization dawned. So that's why you wanted to enter the vault, Antonio muttered in disbelief, running a hand through his hair as he stared at the dimensional portal frame with eyes wide open. From the start to the end, he had underestimated Leo and his motivation behind joining the Black Serpents. His background seemed too clean to suspect him of ties to the cult. Plus the fact that the cult had tried to kill him twice made him strongly believe that the boy would not be related to them. However, it seemed like his assumption was wrong. The cult had definitely grown more sophisticated in how deeply they disguised their men undercover, and with a background this solid, Antonio doubted whether even the universal government could sniff a spy out. Rodova instructor Mian Fei, you were the one who sent a TV-sized package to Leo Skyshard, were you not? Antonio recalled, holding the dimensional portal frame in his hands and admiring its craftsmanship momentarily before smashing it on the ground with savage force. Crash. Put a hit out on Leo Skyshard. Issue a golden mission within the guild. Anyone who kills Leo Skyshard will be rewarded 700 million MP. And if anyone can retrieve our stolen treasure partially or in full, they will be paid 10% of the treasure's value for their services. Additionally, inform the universal government that Leo Skyshard is a cult operative. By tomorrow morning, his face should be printed on every newspaper, and he should be branded a traitor. I don't want there to be a single planet in the righteous faction where the boy can hide. I will force him to live the life of a rat from now until we hunt him down, Antonio ordered, as the other Serpent Guild members present in the vault saluted him and bolted out to relay his instructions at once. Mian Fei, time to look into you as well. Antonio mused to himself, his eyes narrowing as he left the vault in anger, his blood boiling at the loss of nearly 40 billion megapixels worth of treasure that was now stolen from their vault. The news about Leo's cult operative status didn't just spread. It exploded. Like wildfire touched by mana, the story of Leo's betrayal leapt from planet to planet, transmitted through private channels, guild networks, military bulletins, and government alert systems until the name Leo Skyshard began to flash across every major screen in the righteous faction. One notification at a time. Incoming secure transmission. Sender, Black Serpent Guild. Priority, top urgency. Subject, cult operative confirmation, Leo Skyshard. Hello, this is Leslie from the Universal Government Administrative Office, who am I speaking to? Her voice was tired, flat, accustomed to late-night bureaucratic nonsense. But as the transmission loaded and the Black Serpent insignia burned onto her screen, her tone shifted. What? Wait, Leo Skyshard. You mean the circuit boy, the champion from Rodova? Her words trailed off as she scrolled the attached documentation. Arrest warrant. Golden hit. Cult operative status. She didn't say another word. She just began forwarding it up the chain. Hello, this is Ulrich, the principal of the Rodova Military Academy. His voice was stern as ever, but it faltered halfway through his sentence, as the arrest warrant flashed before his office screen. The name flashed first, then the bounty, then the accusation and finally the attached proofs. No, this has to be wrong, he whispered to himself. But the seal was official. And the evidence attached was damning. He stood up and removed his glasses, staring out the window of his office as memories of Leo's entrance test, his duels, and the last few months began playing in reverse. As he wondered if his demeanor had all been a lie. If true, this will be the biggest blow to Rodova's reputation since its inception, he mused, rubbing the sweat now pooling on his forehead, as he prayed that this was but a false call. Hello, this is Sue Fan from the Sue clan. She was on her morning walk when her communicator buzzed. The moment she saw Leo's name, her hands froze in midair. Interesting, she muttered as she glanced at the bounty, the order and the accusation that the boy she once considered a potential ally to her son Su Yong, was now branded a universal traitor. This news will surely have an adverse effect on Su Yang's growth. I will need to consult with his father on this. Su Fan mused to herself, as she continued with her morning jog as if nothing happened. Hello, you have reached the White Lion Guild. The receptionist answered with a cheerful tone, but her words broke when she saw the red alert scan across the central console. Guildmaster. Guildmaster, you need to see this. She shouted, bolting up from her seat. Dozens of other guild members gathered as the screen flickered to life, Leo's face plastered across it. Some gasped, some laughed in disbelief, but the veterans said nothing. A 700 million open kill bounty. A guild as small as ours can sustain our operations for the next 50 years without worry if we snatch this reward. We must kill Skyshard, the guild master said, as he called an emergency meeting of the guild elders and immediately began devising a strategy to hunt Leo Skyshard. Hello, this is the Clarence Military Academy. The message came directly to the principal's office. Clarence teachers surrounded the digital display as Leo Skyshard's image flickered onscreen and the bounty dossier on his head updated in real time. Status: Wanted. Affiliation: Cult Operative. Threat level: Monarch tier potential. Use lethal force. The boy moved like a ghost during the circuits. Now we know why. Seems like it's time to bury Rodova's reputation with this scandal. They were flying too high after their last win, the Clarence principal said, as the smirk on his face widened. Hello, you have reached Universal Mail Newspaper, how may I help you? The journalist on the night shift yawned as he pulled up the headline request, however, looking at the report his eyes widened. Are you kidding me? The Leo Skyshard, the undefeated Rodova boy, cult. He didn't wait for confirmation. He hit the Publish All Channels button with trembling fingers. In less than a minute, 417 planets received the headline. Traitor among heroes. Leo Skyshard exposed as cult operative. Hello, this is Ladina Horizon, of the Horizon Dominion Group. She didn't even finish the sentence before the emergency alert interrupted her line. A bright red signal pierced through the call. The face of her sponsored fighter appeared, branded with betrayal. Ladina's mouth slowly parted, her perfectly manicured fingers curling into a fist. Deploy RPR team. Send a statement denouncing the boy. Now, she offered, as her assistant looked up in surprise. Ma'am, she asked hesitatingly, however, Ladina only screamed louder. I said now. Because unlike the others, Ladina knew this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a scandal. One that would rock the Horizon Dominion's reputation to the core if someone dug deeper into their ties with Leo. And if they didn't get ahead of it fast, it could burn the group to the ground. By the time the morning sun rose across the outer ring systems, the name Leo Skyshard had already become a curse throughout the universe. Yesterday's hero was today's public enemy number one. Next morning, Rodova Military Academy, Su Yang's dorm room. Su Yang stared at the school newspaper in front of him, the looping headline pulsing like a wound he couldn't close. Leo Skyshard, confirmed cult operative. 700 million MP bounty issued, kill on sight. He had read it a dozen times. But no matter how many times the words appeared, his mind refused to accept them. No, that's not right, he whispered, pacing the length of his room, hands clenched so tightly that his nails bit into his palms. He wouldn't. He couldn't. He stopped before the mirror, staring at his reflection, red-eyed, breath ragged, veins throbbing on his neck. Leo, his brother in all but blood. Leo, the boy who was his partner in crime during their worst days at the academy. Leo, the betrayer who had now sided with the evil cult. His thoughts became a storm. 1,000 memories of them training together, bleeding together, laughing, arguing, risking everything for victory played through his mind. However, they suddenly felt tainted, as if rewritten by that single word, traitor. Was I the fool this entire time? He muttered, sinking into the chair, clutching his head. Did our friendship never really mean anything to him? He stared at the picture pinned above his bed. A team photo taken after they won the circuits. Su Yang and Leo stood in the middle, fists raised, grinning like they were invincible. Now, it felt like a joke, as Su Yang's breath grew heavier, uneven. For the first time in years, his aura destabilized, flickering erratically as his emotions ran wild. He didn't know whether he wanted to cry, scream, or destroy something. Because no matter what anyone said, Leo wasn't just another teammate to him. He was his rival, someone he aspired to be like and surpass. But now that his rival had taken a dark turn, he did not even know who to chase after anymore. Planet Terra Nova, Uprising Guild Headquarters, Chaosbringer's office. Chaosbringer sat at the edge of his desk with his legs crossed, as he watched the morning broadcast of Leo's dark turn play on TV, with an evil grin on his face. You think Lord Boss will be tracked down and killed within the next 7 days? Seriously, woman, did you leave your brain back at home when you showed up for work? The Lord Boss I know is simply invincible. You can't catch him, Chaosbringer said in a light tone, as unlike Su Yang, he wasn't fazed by the news at all. The universe's perception of Leo did not matter to him at all, as regardless of whether the universe loved him or hated him, Chaosbringer's faith in him remained the same. The high bounty is no surprise. It's reasonable to place a 700 million bounty on my lord, but to be fair it should have been higher than 1 billion at the least, Chaosbringer suggested, as the part that bothered him the most in the news was the fact that the bounty on his lord's head was not par with his status. Well, time to tell the other idiots in the guild that we no longer support the righteous faction, he muttered, as with a flourish, he stood up, his long nails glinting properly again under his office lights, now that he had found a purpose in life once again. He strutted out into the guild hall, where dozens of Uprising members were gathered around the broadcast, whispering casually about the news. None of them had any idea that Leo Skyshard was the Lord Boss they all loved and worshipped, and hence they talked about his turn to the dark side as nothing more than entertaining news that did not affect them on a personal level. However, all that changed when Chaosbringer came out. Hey yo, bozos! Chaosbringer shouted, loud enough to silence the room instantly. All eyes turned to him. From today onwards, we are all working for the evil cult. You heard me. Fuck the righteous faction. What have they ever done for us? He pointed to the hologram of Leo on the big screen. That man. That's the actual identity of Lord Boss behind his awesome mask. So if the righteous faction wants to dare call him a traitor. He raised his middle finger to the ceiling. Then we'll be traitors too. A pause. From today onwards, we are enemies of the state. The guild hall didn't erupt, not right away. But one by one, heads began to nod. Eyes sharpened and cheers began to ring out. Fuck the righteous faction. We are with Lord Boss. I had no idea Lord Boss was a circuit champion. He's amazing. Lord Boss is worth 700 million megapixels, he's so cool. One by one the guild members began to lose their minds, as under Chaosbringer's lead, they made the shift from supporting the righteous faction to the evil cult in a split second. Also, Chaosbringer shouted, cutting the celebrations off. "Don't say, 'Fuck the righteous faction,' out loud when you're outside the guild headquarters, we still live amongst them. So, just keep it in your hearts," Chaosbringer reminded, as he did not trust the idiots of the guild one bit to keep their thoughts to themselves in public. Meanwhile Mu-Fan. Just like Leo, Mu-Fan had also departed for planet Tithia just minutes after her final call with the 12th Elder had ended. She was well aware that her ties with Leo were too deep and too publicly known for her to avoid being branded a traitor once his identity as a cult operative was exposed. Therefore, after gathering everything she held dear, she left the Mu clan-controlled planet she had been residing on and set her course for planet Tithia, prepared to permanently join the cult's fold. "So, this is our life as a righteous faction citizen coming to an end," she murmured, scrolling through the endless stream of online articles about Leo flooding the Galaxy Net forums, as by now a billion conspiracy theories had already begun to circulate among the general populace. Since Leo was an immensely recognizable figure across the galaxy due to his performance in last year's interstellar circuit, the weight of his betrayal had struck even harder. Although many individuals unhappy with the universal government defected to the evil cult on a regular basis, none of them had ever been as popular as Leo, the literal golden boy who had been adored by teenagers across the stars. This current situation had made the 700 million megapixels bounty on Leo's head feel like nothing more than an added bonus, for the real prize in the eyes of many glory hunters was the fame and recognition they stood to gain if they were the ones to bring down such a notorious cult operative. At present, there was a large portion of the universe that wanted nothing more than to see a photo of his decapitated corpse shared across their private chat groups, driven by the need to see him punished for switching sides and betraying their love and admiration. "Yeah, I hope you learned everything you needed to learn from the righteous faction while you still could. Because you will never be allowed back into their fold again, even after you've become a corpse," Fan concluded, her lips curling into a concerned smile that concealed the anxiety pounding quietly in her chest. The 12th Elder's paw, planet Tithia. The 12th Elder waited eagerly for the good news from the heist team that they had successfully collected the scroll. After all, what could go wrong? They had guaranteed access to the vault. And a secure way back out. This was as easy a mission as they could get, and Noir did not believe that Jaden or his team would mess it up. Well, I wonder how much additional loot they are going to carry apart from the scroll. Must be worth tens of billions of MP at the least, Noir thought excitedly, as he really couldn't wait to get his hands on some much-needed extra money to fill his coffers and get some infrastructure projects started on planet Vorthas. *Buzz. *Bees. His private communication crystal vibrated, and he picked it up with a big smile on his face. "Jaden, you called back, I hope everything went well," he said as soon as he answered. However, the face that stared back at him was not that of Jaden, but instead Officer Bell. "Bell, what happened? Why are you calling me instead of Jaden? Is he injured or something?" Noir asked in a surprised voice, but received no immediate answer from the other side. "Officer Jaden, Bell began but could not finish, looking away from the communication crystal, as if trying his best to hold back tears. Officer Jaden couldn't make it back, 12th Elder, we don't know if he's dead or captured. But he's behind enemy lines," Bell said with much difficulty, and Noir's face began to drop. "What do you mean he's behind enemy lines? What happened to the mission? Did you guys manage to take the scroll or not?" Noir asked in panic, as Officer Bell hung his head in shame. "No, my lord, we managed to take every single treasure inside that vault, except the scroll. It was reinforced behind 7 layers of protective casing, and we did not have enough time nor the proper tools to break through it. Officer Jaden stayed back and tried to bring it home while the rest of us escaped, but in the end he could not make it back before the portal collapsed. We are currently in the clear and heading back towards planet Tithia, but the mission has been a failure. We have looted the serpents, but we couldn't bring back the scroll, Bell reported, as the silence that followed clung to the room like a thick fog, only broken by the low grinding sound of the 12th Elder's teeth clenching behind tight lips. For a moment, Noir said nothing. He just stared at Bell's bowed head on the screen, at the way the soldier avoided eye contact, at the tremble in his voice while reporting the loss. Then slowly, Noir leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing, fingers steepled in front of his lips as his mind began to tick. What did this loss mean for his political career? The scroll was the goal. Without it, the operation was incomplete. Inexcusable. But billions of MP worth of treasure, that was enough to fund new recruitment campaigns, weapons upgrades, and even complete the stalled infrastructure work on planet Vorthas. If he presented it right, if he spun it as a crippling blow to the Serpents, the Elders' Council might just call it a partial win. He'd still get some credit. Still avoid public backlash from the citizens of his planet. Maybe, this isn't all bad, he thought momentarily. But then his eyes flicked back to Bell's face, and the temporary calm vanished. He slammed both palms down on the desk, causing the crystal interface to flicker violently as he exploded, his voice echoing like a thunderclap across the chamber. "You miserable pack of gutless cowards!" he roared, venom dripping from every syllable. "Do you even comprehend what you've done? Do you understand what that scroll was worth to the cult? And you left it behind. You left it behind for Jaden to deal with alone because what, it was hard to break." Bell flinched, but said nothing. Jaden died for nothing. His death gained us nothing but trinkets. And you have the audacity to return empty-handed and call this a report. Noir stood up now, pacing. You had guaranteed access. Do you know how rare that is? Do you have any idea what the dragon candidate went through to give you this opportunity to raid the Serpent's vault? It was the perfect mission, and somehow, you lot still managed to botch it beyond belief. He jabbed a finger at the screen. Look at you, sulking like you lost a puppy. You failed a mission your little sisters could have pulled off if given the chance, and now you want my sympathy. He let out a bitter laugh and waved his hand in disgust. I don't want your tears, Bell. I want results. And next time, if there even is a next time, you better deliver me the mission objective and not your excuses. He leaned in close, his voice now a deadly whisper. Tell the rest of your pathetic team to report in as soon as they land. I want a debriefing. I want details. And by the stars above, I better not hear that you lost even a single piece of that stolen treasure in transit. Because if you did, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The screen went black as Noir forcefully cut the connection, standing in the middle of the room, chest heaving, eyes gleaming with a furious mix of rage and calculation. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. He could still spin this as a half-win. Sure, it would be harder for him to directly name Leo the next dragon with this, as this half-success was not good enough to convince all elders of his potential. However, with a bit of sympathetic storytelling, Noir was confident he could still keep Leo alive in that race to become dragon at the very least. First Elder's Paw, Planet Tithia. The First Elder's reaction mirrored that of the 12th when he found out that their recovery team had proven so utterly incompetent. This failure severely damages our chances of making Leo Skyshard the next dragon. If Aegon Vare manages to reach the Transcendent tier in the coming weeks, just before the annual summit on planet Frostburn, then the 4th Elder will push with everything he has to name him dragon on the spot, the First Elder mused, slowly stroking his aged gray beard. To be fair to Leo, this wasn't his fault. Any reasonable elder would see that. But on the other hand, a deal is a deal. I can't go back on my word unless I have a justifiable reason, one the other elders will accept, he reasoned, as he began to pace agitatedly around his office. For a while, he tried to think of a way out of this mess, but nothing promising came to mind just yet. Well, forget it. I'll deal with this after a proper one-on-one sit-down with the boy once he arrives on Tithia, the First Elder concluded, deciding to let the matter rest for now, since Leo was set to arrive on Tithia in a few hours anyways. Meanwhile, the 4th Elder's Paw, Planet Tithia. Loud laughing noises could be heard from within the fourth elder's private office, as he read through the heist report with watery eyes and a chest heaving from amusement. He simply could not believe how grossly incompetent the 12th elder's team had proven to be. Why bother with making plans to destroy your opponents, when your opponents are stupid fools who are busy destroying themselves? He said between fits of laughter, slamming the parchment against his desk as he wiped the tears from his cheeks. To think that brat Leo actually trusted the young and green 12th to keep his end of the bargain, he chuckled again, shaking his head with mock sympathy. Poor boy, if only you were under me. This mission would have been executed to perfection. The scroll would be within the cult's fold by now, and your rise would have been inevitable. He stood and walked toward the wide window of his chamber, gazing out at the horizon with a gleam in his eye. But alas, fate has other plans, he whispered, a slow smile curving across his lips. With this, nothing stands in Ver's way now. The path to becoming the next dragon is clear. His tone grew deeper, laced with ambition as his thoughts raced ahead. And once Ver becomes dragon, it will be me, not that old lord first, who controls a dragon. It will be me, who will hold sway over the council. Me, who will be the youngest elder to challenge for the first seat. He said as he turned and strode back to his desk, retrieving a crystal communicator from within. Tell Ver to push like hell for the next 2 weeks and reach the transcendent tier anyhow. Tell him that we will provide him with all the help he needs, but he just needs to reach the transcendent tier in the next 2 weeks and the title of dragon is surely his, the fourth elder said, as he informed his assistant to relay his message to Ver. Meanwhile on board the cult ship, Leo's POV. The next 24 hours passed very smoothly for Leo aboard the cult ship, as he did little more than eat, sleep, and unwind. Every few hours, a fresh delicacy would arrive for him, with the dishes ranging from a steaming bowl of savory stew to an intricately plated dessert that looked almost too pretty to eat. The chefs on board seemed to be pulling out all the stops, doing everything in their power to appease his palate and gain his approval. The ship crew served him in rotating shifts, each team arriving with the same practiced politeness and quiet reverence. Yet, despite the change in faces, a strange pattern began to emerge. Every single server who entered his room, regardless of gender, age, or rank, was wrapped in a faint blue aura that Leo recognized from the codex as the color of joy and hope. It was a visible manifestation of their inner spirit, a reflection of how much faith they placed in him, as if they genuinely believed he was the one who would lead them to a better future. On one hand, it wasn't the first time Leo had found himself at the center of blind adoration. During his time as the boss, when he led the uprising, every guild member under him had more or less looked at him in the same way. However, the circumstances back then were different. That role, that image, that burden, they were all chosen by him as he had willingly stepped into it. But this time, he did not. And that distinction, subtle as it may seem, made all the difference to him. As when the hopeful gazes of the staff fell on him unwarranted, it made him uncomfortable. He wasn't used to people smiling at him like he was the light at the end of a tunnel. He didn't see himself as a beacon of hope. He never had. Messiahs, saviors, champions of the people, those titles were meant for someone else. Someone nobler. Someone who genuinely believed in ideals like peace, unity, or the so-called greater good. But not him. He was not one such individual. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't a symbol. He wasn't a legend in the making. At his core, he was just another ruthless warrior. A survivor. A man who had walked through blood and fire. An incredibly selfish one at that, who cared for little beyond his own strength and the safety of his family. So when he looked at these people and watched their eyes light up with gratitude for him simply being alive and existing as if they were basking in the presence of destiny itself, all he could feel for them was pity. Pity, that of all people, they had chosen someone as selfish as him to be their savior. Because sooner or later, they were going to realize that the man they had pinned their dreams on was not the person they believed him to be. Well, it gives me no joy to disappoint innocent people, Leo mused, leaning back in his bed as the aroma of fresh pastries wafted through the air, but I'm not the one who told them I was their Messiah. He shrugged his shoulders and exhaled slowly, letting the weight of their misplaced faith roll off his back like water off stone. If they were looking for a hero, they would have to find one somewhere else. For he was simply not interested in carrying their hopes and dreams, as he strongly believed that it was not his burden to bear. Knock, knock. Just as he began enjoying his pastry, a soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts, as Landon the guard on his door popped his head in, waiting for permission to speak. Go on, Leo said, as Landon gave him a curt salute before saying, we will enter planet Tithia's atmosphere in 20 minutes, so please call for me before that to come clear your food plates. My lord, I wouldn't want landing turbulence to soil your robes, Landon said innocently. However, his words pricked at Leo. Planet Tithia? He asked, sounding confused, as he could swear that the planet he was told his family was being held at was one called Vorthas. Planet Tithia? What do you mean we will land on Tithia? I was told I'm being carried to Vorthas, Leo snapped, rising from his bed with furrowed brows as his gaze locked onto Landon. I don't know why you'd think we were headed to Vorthas, my lord, but I'll fetch the captain right away. He might know more about this than I do, Landon stammered, bowing quickly before dashing off without waiting for permission. Moments later, he returned with the ship's captain in tow, both of them slightly breathless from their hurried pace. My lord, the captain began respectfully, our orders were always to transport you to planet Tithia. Lord Twelfth will personally receive you once we arrive. He paused, as if carefully choosing his next words. I'm not sure why you're under the impression that Vorthas was your destination, but I've double-checked the written orders we received myself. Everything we've received from command has consistently stated, Tithia is the end point. Leo stared at him silently, his jaw tightening as he processed the explanation. Please, I ask for your patience, the captain added, bowing slightly. I'm sure Lord Twelfth will clear up any confusion the moment you arrive. Leo let out a long sigh, lifting a hand to pinch the bridge of his nose as a dull headache formed behind his eyes. Part of him wanted to lash out, but the other part knew it would accomplish nothing. He was tired of the cult. Tired of their manipulative half-truths and their constant shifting of the goalpost. But shouting at a low-level crewman or a flight captain wouldn't solve anything. Maybe my family will be waiting when I land, Leo thought, choosing optimism in spite of everything. Maybe they were brought to Tithia to greet me. Giving the two men a restrained nod, Leo stepped back, folding his arms as he waited for the ship to descend. For now, he decided to hold his patience. A few minutes later, planet Tithia, the hangar bay. The massive cult ship touched down with a low rumble, steam hissing from its sides as the exit doors opened wide, releasing a wave of pressure that gently swept across the hangar bay. Leo walked to the exit with a composed stride and found a line of attendants waiting to formally receive him on the other side. They were all dressed in light-colored robes, their heads bowed respectfully, forming a symmetrical path of deference and ceremony. At the center of it all, draped in elaborate ceremonial garb and surrounded by his personal entourage, stood the 12th Elder himself. His face was concealed behind a smooth, expressionless mask, and his arms were spread wide as he stepped forward, the gesture clearly intending to welcome the guest of honor. Dragon Candidate Leo, we have been eagerly awaiting your arrival here at the Cult of Ascension, the 12th Elder greeted warmly, his voice carrying a calm, practiced resonance as he extended the invitation for an embrace. But Leo didn't move. Where's my family? He asked coldly, his eyes sweeping the bay in a single sharp glance as he hoped to catch a glimpse of a familiar face amongst the crowd. But there was no one. The hangar, though full of faces, felt completely empty, as no one from his family seemed to be present here. I will answer all questions in due time. For now, be patient, the 12th Elder replied, his voice steady and unmoved. Leo's patience, however, had long since worn thin. Without a flicker of hesitation, he drew his weapon and leveled it at the Elder's chest, the polished blade gleaming beneath the natural sunlight of Tithia. I was promised a meeting with my family once I completed the mission, he said, his voice tight with anger and conviction. My brother appears to be severely injured, and I demand to see him immediately. Either honor our agreement or I will hijack this ship myself and fly it straight to Vorthas. Leo threatened, as the mood in the hangar bay shifted instantly. Gasps rang out among the attendants. The guards flanking the 12th Elder stiffened as unease passed between them like a wave. Even the flight crew at the ship's ramp froze, looking stunned at the sight of a dragon candidate drawing his weapon on a sitting elder. Only Mu Fan, positioned behind the 12th Elder, remained composed. She exhaled quietly, as though this confrontation had already played out in her mind 100 times already. However, despite the rising tension, the 12th Elder showed no fear. He didn't flinch at the sight of Leo's dagger and instead let out a low chuckle before speaking again. Child, I am a transcendent tier warrior. Even if I stood alone, you would not be able to lay a scratch on me. So I do not fear the dagger you aim at my chest, he said plainly, his tone firm and measured. And even if, by some miracle, you managed to slip past me and hijack a ship to Vorthas, what exactly would you achieve? You would still be denied access to your family. Because whether you accept it or not, I oversee Vorthas. It is under my jurisdiction. He took a step closer, his voice gaining weight with every word. You are now within the cult's fold. This is my domain, and if you believe that you can do as you please here, I will be more than happy to strip away that illusion. Should you act out, I will not hesitate to put you in chains. Make no mistake, Leo, you hold no cards in this game. You will follow orders and you will do exactly as I say, and only then will you meet your family. His words rang with authority, heavy enough to crush any thoughts of rebellion in a normal person. However, Leo's grip on his blade only tightened in response to his threats. Can I take him on? He wondered, as his eyes flicked toward the figures surrounding the elder. However, to his dismay, each of them emanated a quiet, dangerous pressure, as they all seemed to be transcendent tier warriors at the least. Fuck, Leo thought, as at that moment, the harsh truth finally settled. He could not win here. Nothing he could do would change the outcome. And even if he somehow managed to escape, he would still not be able to reunite with his family, which made even attempting the hijack meaningless. The cult held all the leverage here. They had his family, his home under surveillance, and the planet's entire security force at their command. While he had nothing, he was simply a cornered mouse. Damn it. The bastard played me, Leo thought, his jaw tightening as he slowly lowered his weapon. The gesture was deliberate and calm, though each inch of dissent felt like a submission he loathed to offer. The 12th Elder gave a satisfied nod, his mask tilting ever so slightly. Don't overthink it. I don't plan to keep you here long. I gave my word that you would meet your family, and I fully intend to keep that promise, he said, turning away with a graceful sweep of his robe. But before that happens, there are a few scheduled meetings you must attend here on Tithia. They will not take more than 4 hours. And the sooner we begin, the sooner we can conclude them. So I advise you not to waste any more time. Leo exhaled through his nose and followed, his steps slow, steady, and filled with quiet contempt, as the hangar doors behind him slowly began to close. Somewhere within the mountainous interior of planet Tithia. After disembarking the ship, Leo was wordlessly escorted away, flanked on either side by unfamiliar guards whose eyes betrayed a strange blend of weariness and reverence. Their expressions hovered somewhere between cautious respect and quiet fear, as if unsure whether to salute him or arrest him. The 12th Elder walked just ahead, offering no explanation and no words, his silence as deliberate as it was oppressive. Their route wound through multiple checkpoints, each more fortified than the last, with layers of magical wards, sentry constructs, and elite personnel standing watch, as eventually, they boarded a hovercraft that veered off the main path and entered a concealed passage carved between the mountains. It was only then that Leo began to grasp the gravity of where they were going, for the terrain they traveled through now became eerily silent. After every couple dozen trees that they passed, Leo spotted a new surveillance artifact mounted on a metal pole, as well as the presence of increased numbers of human sentries. I'm probably going to meet someone very important, Leo deduced, as the layers of security had made it clear to him that no one passed this area unless they were supposed to. Eventually, he found himself arriving at a small cottage built in the lowest point of a scenic valley that was surrounded on all four sides by tall mountain peaks, in what had to be the ultimate spot for a recluse to live his life. The structure itself was simple. It looked like a peaceful retreat from the outside that was made from white stone and natural cement, with quiet waterfalls flowing nearby. However, although it seemed like a place housing a quiet sage who would be immensely powerful, Leo felt underwhelmed when he finally came face to face with the owner of the house, who was a luxuriously dressed old man barely a bit more powerful than the 12th elder at the transcendent tier. "Greetings, First Elder," the 12th elder said, as he removed his ceremonial mask and revealed the sharp, calculating eyes behind it. The other man, an elder with gray eyebrows and a broad, tranquil face, nodded in response. His posture was upright, dignified, and completely relaxed, as if Leo's arrival did not excite or faze him at all. "Greetings, Lord 12th, you're right on time," he replied with a smile, as he gestured for the two to follow him to the back garden, where the three of them took a seat around a small teakwood table that housed a very expensive tea set. The duo said nothing at first. Not to each other. Not to him. Instead, they exchanged a few looks and small nods, silently communicating as they poured hot water, adjusted the leaves, and gently stirred the cups. Their movements were slow, methodical, and precise, reflecting years of practiced coordination, as they moved like old generals who had fought 100 wars together. Leo sat stiffly, watching them from across the table, his expression blank but his patience fading. He didn't want tea. He wanted to be done with this bullshit meeting as fast as humanly possible and be on his way to meet his family, but the two pricks were testing his patience with their slow movements and long silence. "Done," the old man eventually said, as he passed Leo a cup of freshly prepared tea with a calm, polite smile. "Sorry for the wait," the man said softly, his voice unhurried and composed. "Please enjoy my hospitality." Leo accepted it, his fingers curling around the cup. He didn't take a sip, but he didn't refuse it either. "We're pleased to have you here, Leo," the first elder continued, as he took his own cup of tea in his hands and gently inhaled the aroma. "I apologize for insisting that you come and meet me first before meeting your family, but trust me when I say that I hope you won't hold it against me, for it will be best for both of us if we put this behind us. Going forward, we must learn to function not as adversaries but as allies, joined at the hip, so to speak, so it's best for us to put such hostilities behind us as fast as we can." He paused and nodded once to the 12th elder, who cleared his throat and continued from there. "I'm sure you have your doubts. Your questions. And plenty of frustration," the 12th elder said with a practiced tone. "We won't pretend otherwise. But we've invited you here so we can address those feelings openly. Because, like it or not, from this moment on, our futures are linked far more deeply than you may realize." He leaned slightly forward. "As you've likely been told, the bloodline you carry is not ordinary. In this universe, talent is impossible to improve after birth. It is inherited, shaped by ancestry, and refined through training. I could father 1,000,000 children and not one might surpass the monarch tier. But your lineage, your inheritance, is different. You are a direct descendant of the timeless assassin." Leo didn't react outwardly, but his silence was no longer passive, as he began to listen intently. "Within the current generation of our cult," the 12th elder continued, "there are only a handful of individuals who share that bloodline, 7 to be exact. Lord Soren and his 2 children. An orphan boy named Aegon Vare. Your father. Your brother. And you." He paused and let the implications settle. "Lord Soren's children, though promising, lack the capacity to reach the pinnacle. Your father and brother, we believe their potential has already hit its ceiling. Which means there are only 2 individuals truly qualified to be named Dragon, Aegon Vare and you." The 12th elder explained, as the first elder, who had remained silent during this explanation, finally spoke again, this time with a sharpness in his voice. "Vare is a genius. A terrifying one. But he has no morality. No empathy. He sees the cult's people as pieces to be moved, tools to be used, and we cannot entrust the cult's future to someone like that. The first elder said, as he locked eyes with Leo and stared into him with an intense gaze. Aegon's bad attitude is the reason behind why we are here today, because instead of him, we want you to be the next dragon. The first elder said, as he let those words sink in for a while. We understand that you are not motivated by glory or by loyalty, the 12th elder picked back up. So let me speak your language. He leaned closer across the table, his voice growing firm. The dragon is the cult's ultimate warrior. The hope of its people. There are 12 secret techniques within the cult of ascension. Each one mastered and preserved by one elder, who passes that technique down to only their successor, the cult's next patriarch, or the dragon. With only the patriarch or the dragon getting the opportunity to learn all 12, the 12th elder explained, as Leo formed a mental image in his mind. Each technique is like a star in a constellation. Individually powerful, but absolute together. He said as he clasped his hands together. If you are named dragon, you will inherit them. You will be trained in all 12, and you will become the ultimate warrior that is unrivaled at the same tier. You will become an assassin unlike no other, and you will have capabilities that far surpass even the most genius warriors of the righteous faction. Leo's brow furrowed slightly, but his interest was no longer hidden. The shift in his gaze was subtle, but both elders noticed it. Personal strength mattered to him, as it was the one of the things that he actively strived for in life. We know power is your priority, the first elder said, almost gently. And if you join us, truly join us, we will help you become the strongest being in the universe, that much I promise. And that's only part of it, the 12th elder added, smoothly stepping back in. Cooperate with us, and your family will be treated like royalty. They will be protected, cherished, and given resources beyond imagination. Their safety and their status within the cult will be unparalleled. As long as the dragon walks among us, his family will be considered sacred. The two of them let the words sit there for a moment, heavy in the air. We know from Mu Fan's assessment of you that there are only two things you care about in this universe, which are personal strength and family. And we are offering you a chance to get the best for both, the first elder finished, his voice calm but unwavering. All we ask for in return is for you to beat Ver and become the next dragon at any cost necessary. Leo listened to everything the elders had to say with a sharp, calculating gaze, his fingers absently curled around the warm porcelain of his teacup. He made a genuine effort to keep an open mind and assess their offers pragmatically, reminding himself that his family's safety was on the line and that raw power often came bundled with compromise. But that didn't mean he was naive enough to buy into everything they were saying. Not even close. He could smell their veiled intentions from a mile away. They wanted him to become the next dragon of the cult. That much was clear. But what wasn't clear, what reeked of omission, was the real reason behind why they were pushing so hard for it to be him and not this so-called Ver to become dragon, as Leo refused to believe their reasoning was as noble or simple as, Ver is unsuitable. That kind of explanation didn't hold up under scrutiny. If Ver was truly unfit, then why was there still a competition? Why allow him to remain a contender at all? If he was as flawed as they claimed, the Elders' Council should have disqualified him outright, and the very fact that Ver remained in the running told Leo everything he needed to know. There was more to this story than what the elders were willing to say. Leo's eyes flicked from one elder to the other, and finally, he leaned back slightly in his chair and spoke. So, let me get this straight, he began, taking a slow sip of the fragrant tea, letting the taste linger before setting the cup back on the table. His tone was calm, almost amused, but the steel in his voice was unmistakable. I agree to become your dragon, and in return, you give me everything you just promised. Power, techniques, protection for my family, all of that. But what exactly do I have to do? His gaze shifted deliberately between them. What does a dragon actually do on a day-to-day basis? Am I supposed to be some kind of priest, giving sermons and blessing crops? Or am I a warrior for show who goes around putting on exhibitions to boost morale? He tilted his head slightly. What exactly is it that you expect from me? The question, simple though it was landed like a hammer, making both elders visibly stiffen. Their previously calm expressions shifted just enough to betray the fact that they had been hoping he wouldn't ask that so directly. They looked down into their teacups at the same time, as though stalling for the right words. The silence lingered just long enough to feel awkward, until the 12th elder finally spoke, his voice quieter than before. "The dragon does whatever the Elders' Council requires the dragon to do," he began cautiously. "That may include public appearances, diplomatic speeches, critical missions into righteous faction territories, and occasionally, leading raids to capture or destabilize hostile planets." He paused briefly, then continued. "The exact nature of your tasks will vary. There is no fixed schedule, but you can expect to be assigned to active field missions for somewhere between 50 to 100 days a year and spend another 200 or so training under various elders and specialists." Leo narrowed his eyes. He heard the deliberate vagueness in that answer. The 12th elder was clearly trying to soften the edges of a brutal reality. "So what you're really saying," Leo replied, his voice cool and edged with mock politeness, "is that I'll be your glorified puppet who is sent on suicide missions when it suits you. Told to smile and wave for the masses regardless of whether I want to. And be pretty much bound to a life of dancing to the Elder Council's whims. Am I right?" The first elder chuckled, deep and unbothered. "That's a crude way of putting it," he said, "but yes. That's more or less what the role entails." His expression remained composed, though there was a flicker of admiration in his eyes, perhaps for Leo's clarity or for his unwillingness to be duped. "You'll be the face of the cult. Our symbol. Our sword and shield. You'll be required to act with dignity in public, tact in private, and bear the hopes of billions upon your back. It is a heavy life, yes. A dangerous one, but it has its rewards as well." Leo exhaled slowly through his nose and gave a humorless smile. At least the first elder was being somewhat honest now, as oddly, that honesty made him feel slightly more at ease. He preferred this harsh truth over false promises any day. "And I'm guessing the reason you want me to be dragon," Leo said, locking eyes with the first elder, "is because you hold no real influence over Aegon Vare." The first elder didn't blink. He nodded. "Correct. Vare is the golden boy of the rival faction within the Elders' Council. If he wins, it will severely damage the standing and political influence of both myself and the 12th elder, which is why, that is a future we're determined to prevent, whatever the cost." The elder's tone had shifted. His mask of politeness had dropped just slightly, revealing a shrewdness and hunger beneath that made Leo instinctively wary. The fake polite smile was gone, and in its place were sharp, calculating eyes. Leo said nothing for a long moment. He simply stared back. So that was it. They didn't want a dragon. They wanted their dragon. One they could rely on to further their influence in the council. One they could parade as their asset. He wasn't a candidate. He was a counterweight. And Vare wasn't just some reckless genius with bad morals. He was the figurehead of the opposite side in this Cold War. Leo understood now. This wasn't just politics. It was a power struggle wrapped in tradition and bloodlines. And he had just been tossed into the very heart of it. "Interesting. Very, very interesting," Leo said at last, as he saw the golden aura of fate burst out of the first elder at this moment, the thick aura enveloping them both. "Seems like I'm at a crossroads yet again." By now, Leo understood all too well that the golden aura of fate was a double-edged sword. It did not reward cowardice, nor did it forgive recklessness, and making a choice when it appeared could permanently alter the trajectory of his life. On one hand, he didn't particularly like the evil cult, nor the two elders seated before him, cloaked in their masks of civility and half-truths. But on the other hand, he was no longer the naive, hot-headed fool who had once arrived on Terra Nova from Earth, burning with the illusion that he could conquer the universe alone without ever facing setbacks. That version of himself was long gone, buried under years of war, failure, heartbreak, and quiet realization. He had matured over time, grown sharper, colder, and more calculated in how he weighed risk against reward. No longer did he see himself as some unbeatable prodigy fated to walk unchallenged beneath the heavens, because in the grand scheme of things, he knew the truth. He was just a Grandmaster tier warrior, one among hundreds of billions scattered across the cosmos, and no matter how talented or fast he advanced, he remained far from invincible and even farther from self-sufficient. Starting his own faction and being self-reliant was a fantasy for when he had the power to be independent, but he wasn't there yet. And he understood that all too well. The smartest course of action for now is to grow stronger using the cult's vast resources, even if it means playing the part of their loyal pawn for a little while. Of course, that doesn't mean I'll stay under their thumb forever. It's only wise to begin planning for independence now, so that when the time comes, I'll have my own exit route ready if things go south. But with Luke still injured and my own strength not yet enough to protect an entire faction from the monsters lurking out there, I'd be a fool to reject the elders outright. Leo thought, as he calmly assessed the truth behind his current situation. His ego, ever restless and aggressive, screamed for him to stand up right now, insult the old bastards to their faces, and walk away with his pride intact. But pride, Leo reminded himself, was a luxury best afforded by those who had the power to back it. And right now, he did not. At this point, I need clarity, Leo said calmly, narrowing his eyes. When you say I have to compete with Aegon Vare for the title of dragon, what exactly do you mean by that? His question earned a visible grimace from the 12th elder, who instinctively pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration before responding. Well, the elder began, clearly trying to suppress the irritation bubbling beneath the surface, that's a headache you were never supposed to deal with in the first place. We had an arrangement that would have guaranteed your ascension to the dragon title with unanimous backing from the Elders' Council, as long as we recovered No's scroll. But the fools I sent to retrieve it failed spectacularly, even after you gave them direct access to the vault. The elder's voice wavered slightly with shame as Leo blinked in confusion. Failed? What happened? Did the portal not function properly? Leo asked, brow raised in disbelief. No, the 12th elder admitted, sighing deeply. The portal worked perfectly. And the stupid team brought back every single treasure from that vault, except the scroll. There was a beat of silence as Leo simply stared at him. Then his eye twitched. The fuck? It took a few seconds for that fact to settle in, as his mind involuntarily drifted back to all the hardships and near impossible odds he had to overcome just to gain access to that vault and somehow place the frame in there, only for the cult to screw up the golden opportunity he provided them, in what was supposed to be one of the most straightforward and easiest missions ever. Well, damn, he muttered at last, letting out a dry, self-deprecating chuckle. You people managed to abduct Darnell from an arena crawling with elite security personnel and his own father watching from the stands, but you could not retrieve a simple scroll from an unguarded vault. He asked incredulously, his voice tinged with sarcasm and amusement. The question landed hard, making both elders flinch ever so slightly, as shame returned to their faces like a shadow creeping back under the sun. The abduction was the 4th elder's mission, and he had executed it perfectly, while the two of them could not even coordinate a simple heist. Well, we can't change what has already come to pass, the 1st elder interjected firmly, cutting the conversation short before it could spiral further. What matters now is figuring out a way to convince the council to name you dragon, even without the scroll. His words were laced with urgency, and as they left his lips, the golden aura flared in Leo's vision once more, almost blinding in its brilliance as it settled like a cloudy fog around the three of them. This was it, a fork in the road. A life-altering choice that would shape everything moving forward. What do I do? Leo asked himself, heart thudding once as he stared at the shimmering golden mist surrounding the table. Do I tell them I memorized the scroll's contents? That I might be able to self-learn the technique once I reach a higher tier and gain access to divine essence? Or do I hold on to it? Let the fact that I can self-learn it remain a secret weapon. An ace card that I can leverage later if the cult ever betrays me or threatens my family. It wasn't an easy call to make. Revealing the secret now meant giving up one of his rare advantages. Yet, if the mission had succeeded as originally planned, the scroll would have been in their possession already, rendering that card unplayable anyway. Maybe, just maybe, this was never a card he was meant to hold onto in the first place. After a long pause, Leo exhaled and made his decision. I don't actually need the scroll, he said, his voice steady and confident. I memorized its contents while I was inside the vault. The technique requires mastery of both mana and divine essence to activate, so I can't use it just yet, but once I advance to a high enough tier, I should be able to. The moment he finished speaking, he noticed the change instantly. A spark lit up in both elders' eyes like twin lanterns flickering to life. The first elder shot up from his seat, practically glowing with relief and excitement as he reached out and clasped Leo's hands. What did you say? You memorized the scroll. Are you absolutely certain you can recreate the technique from memory? He asked, his voice practically trembling with hope. Leo nodded. I am. The first elder's grip tightened slightly, as if anchoring himself to the promise of that answer. Then, with a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips, he looked skyward, gazing up at the bright blue expanse above them as though it finally held answers instead of questions. As though the heavens themselves had just handed him a lifeline. 30 minutes later, the same hidden retreat. Roughly half an hour after Leo had revealed that he had already memorized the contents of the lost scroll, the two elders finally decided to excuse him, sending him on his way back to the hangar bay area, under the guise that his role here was done. However, in truth, they simply needed some privacy to candidly talk about future strategy without the boys' piercing eyes weighing on their words. Hence, with Leo gone, the room, once tense with underlying political undertones, now settled into a soft stillness as the first elder reached for a fresh pouch of tea leaves and began preparing a new batch with deliberate, steady hands. So, what do you think about the boy? The 12th elder asked, breaking the silence as he leaned back slightly, arms crossed, his tone casual, though there was a faint edge of concern beneath it. The first elder did not answer immediately. Instead, he stirred the pot gently, watching the swirling steam rise before finally speaking, his voice calm and reflective. I think the boy walks a fine line between passion and restraint. He gives off the illusion of detachment, but every so often, you can see his expression crack, just for a fraction of a second. So I think, behind those calm responses and cold stares, he actually burns. There's fire in him and he's far more passionate than he lets on. He paused for a moment, pouring the tea with a smooth hand before continuing. That said, he's measured. Thoughtful. He never reacts before calculating the consequences, and even when the board is stacked against him, he doesn't lose the will to continue fighting. In my eyes, that alone sets him apart from most of the young fools who don't know how high Mount Tai is. He placed a cup before the 12th elder, then sat down across from him with his own. Of course, he won't be easy to control. He's not the kind to nod blindly and follow orders. He'll question everything, push back on the little details, argue over methods, over meaning. If we think we can keep him in line like any of our pawns, we'll be disappointed. The first elder sipped slowly, then lowered his cup. But even with that rebellious streak, he's still a good candidate to become dragon. Perhaps even the best one we've had in decades. He has the quick wit the role demands, but also the arrogance that makes people rally behind him. That blend of intelligence and pride is rare, and it's what can make others believe in his strength. His tone darkened slightly. Still, let's not kid ourselves. We only have him under our thumb because we control his family. That is our leash, and the day we lose it, is the day he stops listening. So we must remain careful not to overplay that hand. There was a pause, long and thoughtful, as the statement lingered in the air like a stern warning. I agree. I'll be careful, the 12th elder said after a while, his fingers wrapped around the warm ceramic as he took a careful sip. I won't rely on the family card unless I absolutely have to. If we push too hard, he'll start planning around it. And if he starts planning around it, we'll have already lost him. Silence returned for a few seconds, broken only by the faint trickling of a nearby stream outside the retreat walls. What about the upcoming annual meeting on planet Frostburn? The 12th elder asked, shifting topics with a note of tension in his voice. Do you have a strategy in mind for how you're going to play this? The first elder looked upward once more, eyes drifting toward the open skylight above as a soft breeze rustled the leaves outside. His expression was relaxed, as a rare, almost amused smile appeared on his lips. Yes, I already know how to play it. He leaned forward slightly, his tone growing more deliberate. If the boy truly has the scroll memorized, then I can make a strong case for him to be named dragon despite the physical artifact being missing. I'll paint it as divine providence, the boy's prodigious mind making up for our tactical failures. He paused again, swirling the last of his tea before taking another sip. But to make that speech land properly, I may need to admonish you in public, he said with a glance toward his counterpart, his words neither cruel nor mocking, but pragmatic. The 12th elder's face tightened, frown lines appearing at the edge of his eyes. Being publicly scolded in the council chamber was never pleasant, and certainly not good for appearances, but he knew it was necessary. Pride had to take a back seat when political influence was at play, and hence he nodded without protest. If that's what it takes, I'll bear it. The first elder leaned back, satisfied. Don't worry. Even if I can't get Skyshard appointed as dragon in this upcoming session, I'll ensure Ver isn't either. The last thing we can afford is allowing the 4th elder's faction to gain momentum. As long as we delay that outcome, we stay alive in this race. He placed his now empty cup gently on the wooden table, the sound crisp in the quiet retreat. Then he closed his eyes, took a slow, deep breath, and smiled once more, looking calm, calculating, and ready. The game had begun, and for now, the board still favored them because of Leo's stroke of genius to memorize the scroll when he had the chance. Meanwhile, Leo. After his brief meeting with the first elder concluded, Leo was promptly escorted back to the Hangar Bay area, where he was placed on the first available flight bound for planet Vorthas. This time, he flew aboard a small private carrier designed to accommodate a single pilot and no more than 7 passengers. Sharing the space with him apart from the pilot were a security guard assigned for his protection and a lone civilian who happened to be traveling to Vorthas as well. There were only 4 of them on board the aircraft, and with the scheduled flight time being less than 2 hours, Leo didn't mind the limited legroom or confined interior. He simply leaned back, closed his eyes, and waited patiently for the flight to arrive at its destination. Tap, tap. A few minutes into the flight, Leo felt someone gently poking him with a stick. He stirred, eyes blinking open in mild confusion, and turned to look behind him, only to find the elderly man seated in the row behind, the sole civilian on the craft, peering at him with a curious gleam in his eye. Yes? Leo asked, voice neutral but not unkind. The old man, visibly trembling with age, opened his mouth to respond, but first had to wipe away the bit of spittle gathering near his lips, as he tried his best to speak clearly. Young man, has anyone ever told you that you bear a striking resemblance to Dragon Kevin? The man asked with a kind smile, already reaching into his coat pocket. A moment later, he pulled out a faded, worn leather wallet, its edges fraying from decades of use. I met Dragon Kevin when I was just 7 years old, and I even kept a photo to commemorate the day. Seeing you now brought that memory rushing back, the man continued warmly, extending the wallet toward Leo. Inside was a photograph, yellowed with time, showing a young version of the old man standing proudly beside a figure who bore an uncanny resemblance to Leo's father, Jacob. In fact, the man in the picture looked about 80% similar to Jacob and, by extension, to Leo himself, which even made Leo take a double glance just to be sure. Oh yeah, he does look like me, Leo thought, as if he superimposed his own face over the photo, and adopted the same hairstyle and beard cut, he would definitely look like a brother or a relative of the man. That's very cool, Leo said sincerely, offering a polite smile. Must have been an amazing experience to meet the dragon. He gently handed the wallet back, but instead of tucking it away, the old man clutched it to his chest with trembling hands, his eyes misting with emotion. I couldn't serve Dragon Kevin, I couldn't serve Dragon Noah, my life amounted to nothing in the end, the old man said, his voice cracking. The only wish I have left is to see a new dragon named before I pass on, but the Elders' Council hasn't found a worthy candidate in decades. The grief in his tone was so raw, so genuine, that it caught Leo slightly off guard. For the first time in a long while, he felt a pang in his heart, as he felt a quiet, unexpected pinch of empathy. "Hang on tight, old man," Leo said with a half-smile, his tone lighter as he tried to lift the mood. "The future dragon might still need your services." The man chuckled at that, visibly brightening. "If the dragon calls for me, I'll be there. These old bones still have enough strength left to take on a few righteous faction bastards." "You better believe it," he said, his spirit rising as his voice grew stronger. Leo gave him a respectful nod, then turned forward once again, his eyes settling on the empty craft wall ahead. The dragon, what does that title really mean to these people? For this old man to carry such deep emotion for it, even after all these years. That question lingered in his mind, echoing softly as he sat in silence. Between this brief encounter and the reverent treatment he had received aboard the cult ship, Leo couldn't help but wonder. What did it truly mean to be the dragon? While Leo made his way to planet Vorthas, his competitor for the dragon title, Aegon Ver, completed the final steps of his preparation to break through to the transcendent tier. "No matter how hard I train, my body refuses to grow any stronger. It seems like I've hit my limits," Ver muttered to himself, feeling the unmistakable presence of a wall he could not breach. No matter the intensity of his training, his body simply would not improve any further, for it had already reached the peak of Grandmaster potential with further training yielding no results. "Inform the fourth elder that I'm ready for the breakthrough. Tell him to freshly prepare a high-quality transcendent grade breakthrough potion for me. I'll take it the day after tomorrow," Ver instructed calmly, his tone demanding that there be no unexpected delays, as his assistant bowed deeply and immediately rushed out to deliver the message without hesitation. With the annual Elders' Council meeting on planet Frostburn less than 14 days away now, the announcement that Ver was finally ready to ascend had long been anticipated by the fourth elder, who was sure to be elated at receiving confirmation. Meanwhile on planet Vorthas, Leo's POV. Upon landing on planet Vorthas, Leo instinctively searched for his family members around the hangar bay area, scanning every corner and shadow in the hopes of catching a familiar face. However, he was once again left disappointed when he found no one waiting to receive him. "No worries, I guess I'll see them soon enough," he thought, brushing the disappointment aside, as the guard who had boarded the flight with him back on planet Tithia wordlessly motioned toward yet another transport hovercraft meant to bring him swiftly to his new residence. The two of them flew through a sprawling, densely populated city that, for a moment, reminded Leo of home back on Earth if it had been brighter, greener, and far more beautiful, as the sleek skyline, clean air, and golden sunlight bathed the city structures in warmth. Eventually, the hovercraft slowed before pulling to a stop in front of an old estate, the same one that Leo had glimpsed in the communication crystal just a few days prior. Now, seeing it in person, the structure loomed even larger and carried an undeniable aura of age and authority, with its vintage architecture standing in stark contrast to the modern, urban households surrounding it. Unlike the clean-cut and minimalistic manors nearby, this one had trimmed hedges, thick creeping vines, and stone columns that made up its boundary walls, giving it a sense of timelessness that seemed to defy the passing years, as despite the surrounding houses being much more modern, none of them had the same aesthetic beauty. Step. As Leo stepped down from the hovercraft, the guard beside him tapped his wrist-mounted communicator and spoke a quick confirmation code. Within seconds, the towering iron gates groaned to life, swinging open to reveal a long stone pathway flanked by ancient trees and an inner courtyard that stretched deep into the estate grounds. 2 more layers of security checks followed. First came the biometric scanner embedded in the pathway tiles, which read his mana signature and confirmed his identity. Then came a brief yet meticulous scan by an automated turret array stationed beyond the main corridor, as their lenses flickered with red light before dimming once more, signaling acceptance. As only after passing the second and final check did the inner doors part with a hiss, allowing Leo to step through. "They're thorough about my family's security. That's good," Leo thought, nodding to himself as he silently approved of the security protocols. However, His gaze soon narrowed when he spotted uniformed soldiers patrolling the garden pathways, their rigid steps and stern expressions making the estate feel more like a restricted military compound than a personal residence. "I'll ask them to stay concealed in the future," he noted internally, as he walked swiftly toward the front porch of the mansion, his fingers brushing along the aged wooden railing, rough with time yet still sturdy, until he looked up, and forgot how to breathe. Seated there, on the old swing beneath the porch awning, was Elena, his mother. Her head was bowed, her fingers nervously fidgeting in her lap, her entire posture radiating unease, as though she were holding herself still to prevent shattering. But the moment she looked up and saw him standing there, everything changed. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat, and her hands shot up to cover her trembling mouth, as disbelief and emotion poured from her in equal measure. "Leo." Her voice was barely a whisper, more breath than sound, yet it sliced through the quiet like lightning. By the time Leo heard her, she was already on her feet, rushing down the porch steps with stumbling, frantic movements, her grace forgotten, her pride abandoned as her only thought seemed to be to desperately reach her son. Leo didn't move. He just stood there, frozen like a statue, afraid that if he reached out or blinked too fast, the moment would vanish like a dream too perfect to be real. Then she was in his arms. She crashed into him with the full weight of her motherly love and longing, wrapping her arms tightly around his torso as if afraid he might slip away again if she let go. Sob, sob. Her sobs were raw, her tears warm as they soaked into his robes, as it was only when he felt her cry that he tightened his embrace around her, as he pulled her closer and felt her pounding heartbeat pulse against his. A strange warmth burst from within him, swelling in his chest before rising outward as a soft pink aura flowed from his body like a quiet mist, swirling gently until it encircled both mother and son, creating a shimmering cocoon of pink light in the glowing afternoon sun. For a moment, nothing else existed. No assassins, no missions, no cult orders, no ambition, no hatred, only the feeling of being loved and protected in a way he had almost forgotten. For only in his mother's embrace did he feel truly whole and safe. For him, there was no love purer in this universe than that of his mother. As for all the power he had acquired and for all the strength he carried in his limbs, in her arms, he still felt like a child all over again, that was vulnerable, small, and strangely comforted. Over the past few years, he had endured agony that would have shattered other men. He had walked through impossible trials, stood over the corpses of enemies, betrayed and been betrayed, killed and nearly been killed. But right now, he was simply her boy. His throat tightened, his breathing hitched, and despite all his efforts to stay composed, his voice cracked when he finally managed to say it, softly, brokenly, but with more sincerity than anything else he'd spoken in recent memory. "Mother." Elena looked up at him through her tears, her hands rising to cup his face with the same gentleness she had shown him when he was a child, brushing her thumbs across his cheeks with such tenderness it made his heart ache. "You're home, my baby boy, you're finally home," she whispered in a cracked voice of her own, her lips trembling even as she smiled. And for the first time in months, Leo let tears gather at the corner of his eyes, tears of joy, of longing fulfilled, of an ache soothed. As through the watery blur of his vision, he saw the aura around them shift, a soft mix of pink and blue twining together like two flavors of cotton candy, as despite the emotional occasion, he couldn't help but chuckle when he spotted the oddity. "How have you been? Are you okay? Do you have any limbs missing?" Elena asked breathlessly after hugging Leo for a few seconds, her hands moving frantically over his body in search of any injuries, only letting out a long, shaky sigh of relief once she confirmed that he was indeed whole. "I'm fine. I'm taller and stronger than I've ever been," Leo replied with a soft smile, stiffening his muscles slightly to demonstrate the progress he had made, a subtle invitation for her to notice how much he had grown. However, his mother heard none of it. "Taller and stronger, my foot," she scolded, her brow creasing in concern. "Look at how skinny you look. There's not an ounce of fat on those muscles, and your skin is so thin and veiny. Did you not eat properly these past few years?" she asked in a voice full of worry, as if his physical appearance alone confirmed her worst fears. Chuckle. Faced with her irrational maternal concerns, Leo could do nothing but chuckle quietly to himself, as he did not dignify her concerns with a response. Leo. A sudden male voice cut through the emotional reunion, causing both mother and son to turn as Jacob stepped out of the house. He had heard Elena's sobbing and came to check what was wrong, only to be stunned into a pause by the sight of Leo standing there. "F.A., Jacob," Leo began, instinctively starting to call him father, only to catch himself and replace the word with Jacob at the last second. "Jacob, look, our boy is home," Elena exclaimed joyfully, brushing away a fresh tear from her cheek as she turned to beam at her husband with a radiant smile. "Good," Jacob said softly, his voice barely above a whisper, as he quickly swiped his nose and looked away. It was clear he was trying to hide the emotions building behind his eyes, as although every part of him ached to rush forward and embrace his wife and child, he restrained himself, knowing full well that Leo's feelings toward him had been complicated, strained by years of estrangement. Despite his physical restraint, Jacob's aura betrayed everything he was feeling. A soft pink hue floated around him, unbidden, telling Leo all he needed to know about how the man truly felt inside. Jacob had left their family back on Earth to serve in the military, and Leo had never fully forgiven him for that choice. Yet, in the years that followed, Jacob had tried, truly tried, to make amends, slowly chipping away at the wall Leo had built between them. And now, seeing the honesty and love radiating from the man's aura, Leo finally exhaled a deep breath and decided, at long last, to let the old grudge go. "What happened to your eye, father?" Leo asked, his voice steady and deeper now, his composure returning as he addressed Jacob with a title that hadn't passed his lips in nearly 2 decades. Jacob's eyes widened slightly, not because of the question about his eye, but because of the word, father. It was a title he had not been called since Leo was just 3 years old. Jacob started, but stumbled over his words, his voice cracking as a small tear welled up in the corner of his eye. At 57 years old, he no longer possessed the emotional control he once had in his youth. And while he wished desperately to hold it together, something about being called father again pierced straight through his composure. That one word was enough. It was confirmation that, after all these years, Leo had finally decided to forgive him. That his son once again saw him as part of the family. It was a dream Jacob had once feared might never come true, but miraculously, it came true today. "Ah, come on. Do you need a special invite to come hug him? Get over here," Elena scolded playfully, her voice tearful and firm at once as she reached for Jacob's wrist and tugged him down the porch steps. With misted eyes and trembling hands, Jacob obeyed, stepping into the embrace that Elena initiated, as the two of them wrapped their arms around Leo together. Leo, for his part, placed his arm only around Elena. He didn't return Jacob's gesture of affection, but he also didn't push him away. For now, Leo had accepted the man back into the family fold, but that did not mean they were back on affectionate terms just yet. That would take more time. "My eye is going to be fine," Jacob said after pulling away slightly, answering the question Leo had posed earlier. "I lost it in battle, but they're going to find a replacement soon. They've promised me a new one in about 30 days, and if not a living tissue eye, then they'll give me a cybernetic one. Either way, I'm going to be fine." "Very well," Leo acknowledged, giving him a curt nod, his tone clipped but civil, as with that, he turned and began ascending the porch steps, intending to enter the house and make his way to meet Luke. However, he was stopped dead in his tracks almost as soon as he entered, as not even 2 steps inside the house, Leo was met with the sight of a small figure prostrating itself on the floor. "This lowly creature greets Lord Father," came a familiar voice from the ground. "It has endured a grueling 2 years of separation and has grown stronger to the transcendent tier so as not to disappoint the Lord Father's expectations. However, these 2 years of Lord Father's absence have been the most difficult of its existence." Leo chuckled, having almost forgotten about how formally the little frog usually addressed him. "Living without Lord Father's wisdom has proven to be extremely challenging," Dumpy continued, "as lowly mongrels kept trying to harvest my poison from me. Needless to say, they never succeeded. For I only spit poison on Lord Father's command. However, my refusal did put me in much trouble. I was turned into a combat frog, forced into arena battles for the entertainment of strangers. He paused, lifting his head slightly to look up at Leo's face, his voice growing prouder. And I am proud to report that after 2 years, 304 battles, and countless dead opponents, this lowly creature named Dumpy is still undefeated. Lord Father, if you believe I am worthy enough to return to your side, and if you feel I have not dishonored your name in your absence, please allow me to hop back onto your shoulder where I belong. For I have longed for this moment for a very, very long time, Dumpy said, his tone reverent and full of hopeful anticipation. Leo smiled, a quiet warmth stirring in his chest as he gave a small nod. You have done well. You have not disappointed me. You may return to your designated spot on my shoulder, my genius pet, Leo said calmly, as Dumpy beamed with joy. Ribbit. With a proud little croak, Dumpy leapt off the ground and landed smoothly on Leo's shoulder, his pride practically radiating from his tiny frame as he reclaimed his rightful place beside his master. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.